across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very much appreciate you joining me. And whether you are listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, so appreciate you taking the time to listen and to watch. I'm with you live all the way until 1 o'clock. If you miss anything from the show, why would you want to do that? You can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this, I bet you can't guess what we're talking about. Yeah, of course we are talking about that horrific knife attack on two Jewish men in Golders Green in North London yesterday. We're going to be discussing also Keir Starmer being warned that anti-Semitism is a national security emergency, and yet not bothering to turn up in Golders Green yesterday. Well, perhaps after he saw what happened to the Metropolitan Police Chief, Mark Rowley, with booing by Jewish community members yesterday, he thought it was probably not a good idea. We are hoping during the course of this show to get more information about the man who's been arrested, tasered by the police, kicked in the head as they were arresting him because he was resisting arrest even after being tasered. We now know, well, we've been told he's a British national born in Somalia, and he remains in custody, a 45-year-old man. This morning we learnt from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, that he'd been brought to this country as a child. We don't know whether he was a baby or whether he was 15 years old. But I would describe him as a Somali man who has been given British citizenship, which is a rather different thing, isn't it, rather than a British national born in Somalia. We know, though, he has a history of mental illness and of serious violence. So we're going to be talking about that as well, and hopefully we will get some more definitive information about him. I certainly know that a lot of the information is already known, it's just not yet been divulged. And why not, a lot of us might be asking. An Iranian-linked terror group has claimed Jews. So I want to hear your thoughts. We've been told there's going to be more money to protect the Jewish community. There's going to be, increased step up for patrols, and more is going to be done, and lots of fine words. But I'm getting very much the impression from Jewish community leaders and people on the street, and I was in Golders Green yesterday to show my support, that actually these warm words ain't going to be enough anymore. It's time for action. So what should that action be? What should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? I want to hear from you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can also get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate and text costs £1 standard network rate message. Other stuff we're going to be talking about today, of course, also the Angela Rayner's bid for the top job. Apparently her allies have warned that Keir Starmer's got to go over the Peter Mandelson vetting scandal. We're also going to be joined by Francis Foster of Trigonometry for a chat about his brand new book, basically about why you shouldn't go and be a teacher. And we're also going to be talking about why oil prices have jumped to a high of in the last 4 years as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. So all that coming up. But no doubt at all, the top story today is that horrific attack that broke while we were on air yesterday. I'm delighted to say joining me is the perfect guest, booked actually about a week ago to do today, because our regular guest on a Thursday, Philip Ingram, is away. But I'm delighted to say of all days to have him in the studio. Journalist and author Jake Wallace-Simons joins us. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Not only a former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, but also you're the author of two very pertinent books today. Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred, what to do about it, and also Never Again, how the West betrayed the Jews and itself. And I think that last word is the crucial thing here, because I think one of the things I feel most strongly about on this is that this wasn't just an attack on Jews, this is an attack on British values, on all bits. I'm not Jewish, but I feel this attack, and I think we should all feel this attack. And I think we're at the point where basically you're either trying to stop it, you're either demanding action to try and stop it, you are speaking up, or you're the problem. And staying silent is part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people need to hear that the Jews aren't really the victims here. Jews are never really asked to be victims, not playing the victim card, not asking for sympathy. Jews have been suffering anti-Semitism for 2,000 years. We've survived for 2,000 years, are going to survive this. As for the health of the West, I'm not so confident in that. This really is a symptom of the collapse of so many aspects of our culture and our society into radicalisation, into a loss of self-confidence, a loss of a shared thing, rather than looking at the problem and solving it.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it's the rise of radicalisation in our society, which is being enabled by the lack of our sensible sense of self. I mean, in a country where you can no longer fly your own national flag, is it any surprise that the vacuum is going to be filled by Islamic radicals, by far-left radicals and other radicals of different stripes?
I mean, this is not a shock to anyone sensible, i.e. our audience. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time, which of course makes us fascist far-right bigots. Of course it does, because saying facts, talking common sense, and being bad for your country makes you all those things these days. But when you have Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, who has talked a good number, I mean, she talks a good. That said, she has in the past been on pro-Palestinian marches where there has been clear anti-Semitism. Not since she's been Home Secretary, but she says all the right things, she makes the right sounds, she expresses her concern, she says she's trying to take action. But I'm afraid, it just rings hollow. Keir Starmer, again, he talks a good game. I rooted out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party when I became leader. Mate, you were in the shadow cabinet of a man who allowed anti-Semitism to explode in the Labour Party and across this country and normalised it. But the fundamental issue, I mean, Tories didn't do enough. And JK was just pointing out when he interviewed Suella Braverman, former Home Secretary, when she, spoke about this stuff loud and proud, she basically got sacked for it. But the basic problem is, and the thing that, let's say the quiet bit out loud, we've imported this problem. I spend a lot of my, teenage years in Golders Green, the area where we've seen this spate. This isn't the first attack. We've had 3 or 4 now in that very, very walkable distance in the last few weeks. And I lots of Jewish friends, and yes, although I know that there have been security guards at synagogues and Jewish schools for many, many years, it wasn't something that was a concern. It was not something in the news. It was because it wasn't happening. There, of course, there have always been anti-Semitic attacks and abuse, but nothing on the scale we're seeing now. Nothing close to it. There has been an explosion of it, in particular since October the 7th. And this is the bizarre thing. If your response to 1,000+ Jews being murdered, raped, butchered and taken hostage by an extremist, Islamist, fascist terror group, if your response to that is abusing Jews on buses or on their way to school, or firebombing their ambulances, or attacking synagogues, or knifing people at a bus stop because they've got a kippah on and identified as Jewish, if your response to that is that, then we've got a problem. And the reality is, and if you look at the people who have been arrested for attacks, look at the people who have been involved in attacks, there is a familiarity with certain names. They largely are not called John Smith, born and raised in Devon. We haven't got a spate of anti-Semitism of little old ladies from Somerset or Cumberland. We haven't. Let's call it what it is. We have an Islamist anti-Semitism problem, and the Islamist anti-Semitism problem has been imported to our country knowingly and openly, and it has been allowed to fester and indeed encouraged by many on the left, whether it was Corbyn's Labour Party, Keir Starmer's Labour Party, Zach Polanski's Green Party. I mean, the number of councillors standing as Green councillors in this next local election who have openly celebrated, joyfully celebrated the massacre and rape of Jews on October the 7th in Israel. I mean, I'm sorry. This is not something that is under the rug. This is not something that people aren't aware of. No one can be surprised by it. No one can be shocked by it. We've imported it. We've allowed it on our streets every fortnight across London. People are marching with the most outrageous anti-Semitic bile being shouted, being chanted, and on placards and on posters. And what has been done about it? Absolutely the sum of zero.
Well, this is exactly it. I mean, we live in this is quite a depraved time, I think, in our society, where we have what's been widely described as a national emergency of racism, of racial harassment, violence, intimidation and vandalism. And our politicians are just not up to the task. I mean, for one thing, they haven't got any way, they don't seem to be able to muster any adequate way of responding. I mean, I saw earlier today the local Jewish free sheet, the Jewish News, their front page had bull...
Yeah, don't say that word.
Bull bingo with a whole load of cliches that politicians trot out. This is not who we are as a country. Yeah. We stand with the Jewish community. Yeah. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Yawn, yawn, yawn.
We've heard all of them,
Hate
haven't
has
we?
no place. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And we've heard all of that stuff again and again and again. And action comes there none, because they don't know what to do about it. In truth...
No, they do know what to do about it.
What are they going to do?
They know perfectly well that we've imported this problem and we need to actually deport. I'm sorry.
Well,
I come from a liberal left background. Genuinely, I'm supposed to be far right, but we need to support the problem. Foreign nationals who are in this country, whether you're, IRGC, an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, whether you're a supporter of Hamas, whether you're a Muslim Brotherhood, extremist cleric, you're basically allowing in your mosque to have extremist preachers. Bye. Thank you for coming. Because an awful lot of this is people who either come to this country, who are dual nationality, and I'm sorry, thank you very much. Goodbye. We don't need you here anymore. We need to be more ruthless about protecting our country. Yes, there'll be a lot of people who are anti-Semitic who are born and bred in this country, and I'm afraid we're stuck with them, but we need to be much stricter. I'm done. This whole diversity is our strength nonsense. Rubbish. It's not. What is our strength is our values, our culture, our history, our language, and our community cohesion. And there are many, many, many immigrants who have come to this country who have contributed to that. And actually the Jewish community has been one of the biggest contributors in terms of that. But when there are lots of communities where you're looking at people living separately, not speaking English, not assimilating, not integrating, demanding changes in our laws to accommodate their views in terms of food, values, freedom of speech, what can be discussed, what cannot be discussed, and under the threat of the extremist wings of those communities. And we know who we're talking about. We're talking about extremist Islam, threatening death to people. Batley School grammar teacher, many politicians in public life, and many public speakers having panic buttons in their homes because of this threat. We're not seeing that from the Indian communities that come here. We're not seeing that from Jews. We're not seeing that from Chinese people who come to this country. We're not seeing that from Ukrainians who come. We're not. We're simply not. We're seeing it from one particular group. And of course, no one is saying all Muslims or people who've come to this country who are Muslim or British-born Muslims share these views, but far too many do. Yeah. The polling is clear. The polling is again and again and again by Channel 4 or the Henry Jackson Society has shown that the average Muslim in this country holds views which are simply and utterly unacceptable to average non-Muslim in this country.
Yeah, and the worst part of it is that we did this to ourselves. We opened the doors over successive generations, not you and I, but our leaders did in their great wisdom, and invited this problem into our country while at the same time doing down our national immune system to that sort of problem, which is our national pride and sense of coherence and self-belief and confidence. We've been taught to think that we're bad. Everything that others
racist,
do is beyond reproach. I mean, look at this. I mean, this current attacker is from the Somali community in Britain, of which 72% are in social housing. About 47% are economically inactive, have one of the highest rates of imprisonment of any nationality in Britain, known for knife crime, for gangs, for robbery, for drugs. David Amess MP, let's not forget, was killed by a Somali-born immigrant, Ali Harbour Ali, in 2021. Why have we allowed these people in? What possible benefit?
And why are they staying if there's...
What possible benefit has it brought to us, our people, our country?
But again, these were refugees from the Somalian civil war. But again, why is that? Okay, we're told, well, there's...
Refugees go home when the threat passes.
Yeah.
And again, I think the not all
going to say, again, we mustn't, because people will say, it's because they're dark skin. Well, no, we're not talking about... We're talking about some people coming from particular cultures and from particular belief systems who have chosen not to integrate.
But not all Somalis is important, because you and I were talking about Somaliland, the other bit of Somalia, which is stable and is relatively democratic and Western friendly. So the not all is not just a platitude, it's meaningful. But the problem is that we've lost any capacity to distinguish between immigrants that are going to come here, assimilate and be a benefit to this country, and those who are going to try to subvert it and be a danger to it. We've let in far too many of the latter because we haven't been separating the goats from the sheep. And this is the consequence. The Jews are first in the firing line, but everybody else is next.
This is the thing, and everybody else. Yeah, when Iran, does this, it's the whole of Britain, it's the whole of Israel, the whole of Britain, the whole of America, the whole of the West. People need to read up more on what this actually means. And people like the idiots who spout and have the Palestinian flag in their bios on social media need to start learning what things like globalise the Intifada means. It means stab Jews on the streets of London. That's what it means. It means literally take the mass murder of Jews worldwide. That's what it means. So don't be sodding surprised when people start doing that. And here's the other group of people who need to be held to account, not just the government, failures of the police as well to actually tackle the tiny number of prosecutions, failure of the CPS as well, but also the media. Mainstream media, BBC, Sky News, two of the worst offenders on this, Guardian newspaper as well, and frankly, other mainstream newspapers who their coverage of Israel has fed into a lot of this. If you demonise a country, which is the only national Jewish homeland, I'm not saying I don't hold a candle for Netanyahu. I will absolutely criticise where I see fit, but the idea that you accuse a country of completely false things like genocide, like starving Palestinians. None of that has happened. It's a complete lie. And anyone who's paid any attention would know it was a complete lie. But when you demonise a country which is Jewish and then people make that link, I mean, I can see when I show, when I send a post about what's happening in Golders Green, my timeline is full of the most vile anti-Semitic hate. Some of it's not even disguised as anti-Zionist hate, but it is anti-Semitic hate. Some of them bother to pretend it's just anti-Israel. Why two men being stabbed one way at a bus stop in Golders Green in North London has got anything to do with anything Netanyahu or the IDF have done on the other side of the world is beyond me. But if you think there is a link, you're just a Jew hater. Yeah. That's what you are. And people aren't standing up to that. And I'm sorry, the BBC and Sky have got a lot to answer for on that front. Yeah, I mean, this kind of gets to the point of what the government should be doing. Deportations of foreign nationals who are filled with hatred is one part of it. With a very low bar, by the way, a very low bar on that. But getting to grips with these hate marches is vital as well. Of course, we need to allow free speech in this country, but not at the expense of our national security. They need to be repressed and marginalised. Enough is enough when it comes to that. If you can't march down the street without shouting anti-Semitic slogans or holding banners, you don't have the right to march. Exactly. If you can do it by just saying you're worried about the people in Gaza, that's fine. That's a totally legitimate and reasonable concern. But you should probably be marching against Hamas if that's the case. That's right. I mean, these places are hotbeds of radicalisation. They're petri dishes for radicals and for terrorists we've seen. So they need to be dealt with. But the government has only, I mean, it's announced 25 million extra quid for Jewish security, which is welcome, but you get the feeling that the government is fanning the flames with one hand and reaching for the fire extinguisher with the other, because the government is part of the problem. It has been legitimising these false narratives about Israel time and time again during the Gaza War, which, by the way, finished a few months ago. You wouldn't know it from the ongoing protests, but during the Gaza War, Keir Starmer expended far more energy criticising and condemning Israel than criticising and condemning the jihadis, Hamas, who would have us dead, as well as the Jews. And that has been picked up in the culture at large. What we need from the government, in addition to all these measures, is a counter-propaganda campaign insisting that to tell people, whether it's children, whether it's adults, whether it's a media campaign or whatever, Israel is not a genocidal state. There was no famine in Gaza. Israel is not an apartheid state, not a white state, not a settler colonial state. Israel is a democracy in the Middle East and an important British ally. The only country in the Middle East that respects freedoms, where you can go to a gay pride march if you so desire, where women can be free, where Muslims have equal rights to Jews, and so do Christians. Of course, it has its problems, but all democracies do. Israel is our ally. It's got fewer problems than we've got here. And we need that counter-propaganda campaign from the government, in addition to a raft of other measures to counter this problem. And that 25 million extra quid is not going to pay for every single Jewish child to have a security guard on the way to school, or every Jewish man standing at a bus stop, of every Jewish woman on a bus. Well, exactly. Putting up fences around a particular ethnic religious group in this country is not the solution. Preventing them being attacked in the first place. Exactly. So my question to you, just give us a call. I want to know 0344 499 1000. What should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? Give us a call. Let us know your thoughts. Lots of calls already on the board. Not surprised by that. Let's turn to another topic. By the way, I haven't even got on to Zach Polanski, because I I try so hard not to swear on air. I don't manage it all the time, but I do my best. We will come to that a little bit later. But let's talk about Starmer's woes, other woes. I mean, he's too busy to go to Golders Green yesterday because he would have been booed, and quite rightly so. But along with the Met Police Chief, Angela Rayner, her allies, i.e. Angela Rayner, according to reports, has said that Starmer has got to go. Friends of hers insist that his his appointment of Mandelson, despite being fully aware of Mandelson's relationship with Epstein, made Labour look like a pedo protectors party. I mean, it already is. Have you heard of the grooming gangs, Angela Rayner? You were quite happy to keep quiet about that, though, weren't you, love? Didn't care about those kids being abused, did you? Keir Starmer's talked about a reshuffle. Apparently the Cabinet were not happy about the idea of a reshuffle. Again, it's supposed to be a Prime Minister in power, not just in office, gets to decide who's in his cabinet, but he's refusing to 100% to rule out sacking Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, as if Rachel Reeves is the problem. Sorry, he's the First Lord of the Treasury. Whatever Rachel Reeves has announced in any budgets that has ruined this country is his responsibility. Do you think Angela Rayner's going to make it back in? We're told she might be sorting out, which won't be cleared by HMRC over her unpaid stamp duty, but she may well come to an arrangement where she can say that's done and dusted and can return to the Cabinet. Is that going to solve any of Keir Starmer's problems?
Well, I don't think it would. I mean, she obviously is angling for the top job. She's wanted it for some time, and she has quite a large base in the trade unions and elsewhere who would want to see her installed instead of Keir Starmer. But the whole thing, I mean, there just isn't a single member, apart from perhaps Shabana Mahmood, there isn't a single member of the Cabinet that I would think, you'd be a good leader for this country.
I don't think Shabana Mahmood would be a good leader.
I'm being generous. I mean, she's about the only person who's within the scope of sanity. But everybody else, I mean, we went from Jeremy Corbyn's kinder, gentler politics, and look where that got us, to Keir Starmer coming in promising grown-up politics, and he was going to, do you remember this, tread lightly on our lives?
Yep.
Do you remember that ironic statement? And we've descended into this grown-up politics, supposedly, which just smells of corruption and cronyism and depravity whichever way you go.
Just general poor judgment.
And poor judgment. I mean, everybody is covering their back. Everybody is out only for power and not the interests of the country. And frankly, we all want to see the back of Keir Starmer desperately, let me be clear.
Yeah.
But do we really want to see Angela Rayner or any of the other idiots taking his place?
I want Ed Miliband. I think it'd be more fun. I think watching the government, the country collapse within a matter of hours it'd be great news. Well, I'm just saying, I'm a journalist first and foremost, but no, actually I'm a British patriot first and foremost. So no, I don't want Ed Miliband as leader, but it could happen. It could happen if Labour membership get there, say either Angie or our Ed with his Ed Stone. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, by the way, we've got the latest poll, a fascinating poll by a good friend of ours on this show in terms of the nationwide thrashing that looms for Labour. A devastating new poll has predicted that the party could lose not just the 1,500 that many have been predicting, but 1,850 councillors in the May elections. That's just the English local elections. That's not even allowing for losing control, as the polls predict, of the Welsh Senedd and the Welsh Government, but also losing their position as basically number 2 in Scotland. I mean, we are talking about absolute devastation there. We'll talk about that later as well. We're going to get your calls up next. Do get in touch. I know a lot of you want to have your say. We'll do as many as we can. 0344 499 1000 about that Golders Green attack. It's the latest of many attacks. It's a miracle no one died. But what should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? Are they doing enough? What would you do if it was up to you? This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 10:28 is the time. This is Talk. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Let's go to Carl, who is in Liverpool, wants to have his say on, well, our question is very simple. What should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? Good morning to you, Carl. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Yeah, I think obviously we have those marches on the weekends. They need to be banned or certain stipulations put in place where they can't chant what they're chanting.
Yeah.
The government themselves need an absolute kick up the backside, and I still don't think, Julia, that they will do anything to stop this. I am of Jewish descent, and my nan years ago, when I was a young boy, used to say when we were growing up that we will see another attack on the Jewish people. She said that she used to say it might not be in my lifetime, but it will happen again. Yeah. And over the last couple of years, it's really ramped up, and it's worrying for the Jewish community because Jewish people just want to crack on with their lives.
Like everyone else, get on with it. Why do you think it's? Why do you think it's happened again?
I think the government's got a lot to answer for, Judy, because they could have stopped all this anti-Semitism. Keir Starmer led by example and recognised Palestine. Yeah. And showed everyone else the way that it doesn't matter what you say in the streets, I'll recognise Palestine even. And his wife is Jewish and his children are of Jewish descent. And how dare he do that to his wife and the rest of the Jewish community?
I'm told by people in the community that his wife's family are absolutely furious with him, and there was a big family sort of breakup over this.
Yeah, well, you see that when they're together. She doesn't look really like she's sort of interested in them. But I think if the government now, Julia, if they fail to act, and let's be honest, this is a terrorist attack. It was also a terrorist attack on the ambulances, and the men that were killed in the man that was killed in Manchester, the Jewish community. What needs to happen is the IRGC need to be prescribed, the Muslim Brotherhood, and I would go as far as to kick every single member of the Iranian government and whoever else supports all this stuff out of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even understand why that is even a controversial view. Bye, thanks for coming.
Exactly, Judy. And I heard someone say, "Oh, we've reprimanded the Iranian diplomat." I'm sorry, stick them on a plane and get rid. Yeah. We are not setting examples to these people that are crossing the line. And if it was a white person doing these attacks or a white person saying something online, anti-Semitic, they will be dealt with. Absolutely. So physically, in the real world, they're happy to just let this go along. But if someone puts a hatey word on the internet, they're arrested. Absolutely.
Carl, thank you very much. I have to say, the stuff that, I mean, I'm full of freedom of speech, but some of the stuff, I mean, it's in my timeline on social media as well. I mean, God, this government, it bleats non-stop about, social media. I mean, if you just read the responses to any of my messages that I've put out yesterday, and you can see what an absolute cesspit that is. Nothing done about it, either by Elon Musk's ex or by the police. Even if you report stuff, nothing is done. Let's go to Stephen, who's on the line in Pinner. Hello, Stephen. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
First of all, I agree with everything that your last caller has had to say. I just want to mention just a couple of points. First of all, Maurice Shine, one of the people stabbed yesterday in Golders Green. I know him very well. Yeah. He is the sweetest possible man you could possibly imagine, and just having gone to synagogue and then finds himself standing at a bus stop and being stabbed, it is just absolutely outrageous. And how somebody can do that to an elderly gentleman is absolutely beyond me. I personally, I'm Jewish. Thank you personally for all your support to the Jewish community. You're absolutely wonderful.
Well, I'm sorry you feel the need to say that, but I'm because this should be kind of basic moral decency, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Both my late parents were refugees from the Second World War. Thankfully, they actually avoided the camps. They came here in 38 and 39, and have always loved this country, etc. And I've grown up in that sort of environment as well. And when they came to this country, they were given a little handbook about how to behave in England, okay? One page written in German, the other page written in English, okay? So therefore they were sort of taught to respect, let us say, the English way of life. And I feel, unfortunately, there are too many people in this country that are completely the antithesis to that sort of thing, all right? We have a Labour government that is just kowtowing to a majority Muslim population compared to the Jewish population. And we've got, the Greens, and, in the local elections coming up, they're all talking about, they're promoting stuff about Palestine, etc., rather than the issues actually in their local
collecting the bins. Yeah, exactly.
Like collecting the bins and fixing roads in holes in the roads, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. I personally am involved in a group of volunteers that go around primary schools. We try to go around primary schools in or around northwest London area, Hertfordshire, etc. And we have a program that has come from the National Holocaust Centre up in Nottingham. We're all volunteers. We go into school. We like to go into schools and teach Year 10 kids about a little boy called Leo, who was a little Jewish boy aged about 10 years old, and how things got tougher and tougher and worse for them in Germany until he came over to this country in the kinder transport. And to me, this is so much about education. I think
and about learning no point just knowing history if you don't learn the lessons from it. And I do think we are in 1930s territory. People think, oh, don't be so extreme. No, I really do think we are. Stephen, thank you for that. I really appreciate that call. 10:35 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk to the former president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, Marie van der Zyl, find out what she thinks the government should do to stop this rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain, because I'm really not sure an extra 25 million quid for security is going to hack it. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk the Home and Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:37 is the time. Journalist and author Jake Wallace-Simons joins me on the show. We'll get his reaction to what my next guest has to say. She is Marie van der Zyl. She's the former president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, and she joins us to talk about, obviously, Marie, this latest horrific attack in Golders Green where 2 men were stabbed. Thank God did not actually get killed, but simply that is a matter of luck at this point. A 45-year-old man born in Somalia, brought to Britain as a child, now a British citizen, but I'm sorry, I'm not calling him a British man. He's under arrest. We're told an Iranian-backed group has claimed responsibility, but we don't know if there's any evidence for that. We're hoping for an update later in the day. But what do you think the government should be doing to tackle this rise of anti-Semitic attacks that we're now seeing?
Thank you for having me on. And can I just say that my thoughts are with the victims. This is an awful situation. There is an explosion of anti-Semitism. And to be frank, extra money is welcome, but that is not going to solve it. There has to be a very clear, coordinated plan, and there has to be action here. What we're seeing at the moment is just simply not good enough. Some of the things that they need to do, I think that these marches do need to be banned. We've looked at every ways of limiting marches, moving marches, arresting people. That clearly isn't working. So it's about time that these marches are now banned.
Wait, can I clarify? You know, the pro-Palestinian marches, people will say they've got a right of freedom of speech. People have a right to have a view on Palestine. Why do you think they should be banned? Just to clarify.
I think they need to be banned because we are seeing an explosion of anti-Semitism and killings on the streets.
Are they being caused by those marches?
I don't know why they're being caused, but you have to look at what the underlying things are that are fueling anti-Semitism. And quite clearly, this isn't helping. A lot of Jewish people will call them hate marches. Yep. I'm sure you've heard lots of people come on. Look, I'm all for freedom of expression, but I think we've gone beyond that, and that the government has to tackle Islamic extremism. Okay. I don't feel that it's under control. And certainly when I was president of the board, I'd campaigned the Labour Party for many years to prescribe the IRGC, and they said that they would, and they did in their manifesto, and they haven't. I think they need to get a grip on that. But the great British public, civic society, they have to wake up. This isn't just an attack on Jews, it's an attack on all of us. No community should feel unsafe and be subject to violence. This really isn't a surprise. It's a cumulative impact of everything that we have been seeing. But this is a very real situation, and these attacks need to be called terrorist attacks. Yeah. They are quite clearly attacks in that territory, and they have to work a lot harder in the NHS, in universities, particularly on campus, and they've got to tackle online. Online has to be looked at. I'm sure that you probably see all the abuse you were referring to.
I don't know, honestly, Marie, I don't know how I have time to even come and do my show with all the baby killing that I'm busy doing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job, but they have to get to grips with the issues. It has exploded out of control, and the community is feeling very unsafe, very, very frightened. People shouldn't have to feel anxious for their safety standing at a bus stop.
No, well, can I ask you about Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, because he has sparked quite a lot of fury, I mean, quite apart from the huge number of the party's candidates who are standing amid his own deputy leader has expressed views which I think are said to be unacceptable. But a huge number of his candidates have been openly celebrated October the 7th, the massacre of Jews, and were putting hearts next to reports. It was long after we knew about the full scale of the horror on that day. They can't claim ignorance. But Zach Polanski himself, who is Jewish by birth, that he says that he said in an interview recently that the Jewish perception of being unsafe. Now, it's obviously not a perception, it's a reality, even just walking down the street, as you say, standing at a bus stop. What do you make of what he had to say?
He's at best delusional. He cannot seriously say it's a perception. People are being murdered. It's about time he gets a grip on it. I have to say. And he should, if he's hearing it even from people in the Greens, it's about time that he listens, and he should be ashamed of himself. I can't really say more than that
fair enough.
on air, but I'm sure that you can understand some of my thoughts.
You say about all the different things that need to be done, and that British society needs to wake up.
Yes.
But the government hasn't done anything so far. And we were told, you know, even the Met Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, who got booed, I think quite rightly, by local residents in Golders Green yesterday. Whether they're representative of the local community as a whole or not, we don't know. But there were certainly people there who were angry. He's talked about, you know, clamping down on this. But, you know, I remember, you know, driving down through Golders Green, down the Finchley Road, down through central London, pro-Palestinian supporters waving their flags, blaring out, shouting out about killing women and men and raping their wives, daughters of Jews, openly, broad daylight in the street, all on camera, number plate caught, everything. 4 men eventually arrested. All 4 charges were dropped. That happened in 2021.
I remember that.
Well, exactly, no charge. But the Met Police saying they're going to come down full force. The reality is they don't. And even one of those who's been arrested and charged in relation to the arson attack on the ambulances, only just a few hundred yards away, is out on bail extraordinarily after an arson attack on the Jewish community ambulances. There is no evidence that either the government, the police or the Crown Prosecution Service are taking this issue seriously.
I think the government have taken it seriously, and they've done a lot to try to help, but it's not enough.
What?
Anti-Semitism has now become normalised. They did work hard with the police, and the police have improved how they've policed all these marches, but they can't stem the tide of hatred. That's the problem. They now need to do more because of the underlying reasons.
What are the underlying reasons?
I'm afraid anti-Semitism is a disease which has been around since the dawn of time. But I think here...
No, it has. No, I accept that. And it's, you know, medieval times. I realise that. But it is exploded in Middle... Well, that's the thing. It has exploded in recent years, and is exploded in recent years for specific reasons. I would say the Labour Party is part of that problem. Before the Gaza war, led by Jeremy Corbyn. But also, Keir Starmer served in that shadow cabinet quite happily to try and elect a man who I think has been openly supporting the most vile anti-Semitic extremist organisations, which I believe Jeremy Corbyn has done. Keir Starmer was happy to get him elected. He said he dealt with the anti-Semitism problem in the British Labour Party. You're a member of the Labour Party.
I'm going to answer that.
Do you not have a problem with Keir Starmer's
I'm going to answer if you let me.
Yeah.
In relation to Jeremy Corbyn, who brought anti-Semitism from the fringes of society into the heart of the Labour Party, I think Keir Starmer did do a good job. He said he would root out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and I think that he has tried to do his best. After October 7, do you know that anti-Semitism reached its peak within 3 days, only 3 days? That's what it tells you. And anti-Semitism has now exploded into wider society. It's completely normal, and it's progressed from hatred on campus, hatred online, to actual murder and killings. And the flow of it cannot be stemmed. And I think the conflict in the Middle East is obviously having a big impact, and we are importing conflict in this country, and we have to try and find a way to deal with that. But the measures that they were using before are no longer good enough. There have to be much firmer measures than there were, and that is something that has to change. And they're going to have to tackle Islamic extremism. That is something that they really are going to have to do.
You're saying 2 different things. You're saying we have to tackle it, but actually, you know, it's here to stay. We're stuck with it.
Anti-Semitism is always here to stay. It's a question of managing it. And education, we can't underrate. One of your callers was talking about that. I'm all in favour of education, interfaith activities, building bridges with communities. These are all Holocaust education, very important things, but you will never eradicate anti-Semitism.
But I mean, let's you support. You're giving support to a party. You remember the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, who wanted to stand. He wanted to serve in a government under Jeremy Corbyn. You say brought anti-Semitism out from the fringes, sorry. But also a government that has recognised Palestine as a state as a reward for Hamas for the massacre on October the 7th.
Look, I'm here to talk about anti-Semitism, and there's a lot of things that people will say about the causes of what's happened and why it's exploded in the UK. And a lot of the Jewish community are certainly very concerned at those decisions that the government have made. As you'll appreciate, I've always been a representative person to represent the wide diversity and full spectrum of Jews, and across the political spectrum, I have to respect different people's points of view. And yes, lots of Jews are very unhappy about decisions that have been taken in Israel, and lots of people have warned the government of the consequences, which we are now being seen played out on the streets. But the fact is, the conflict in the Middle East has let this out of the bag, and it can't be controlled. But they have to do more. In government bodies like the NHS, we shouldn't be seeing doctors posting vile anti-Semitic material. I'm an employment lawyer, looking in the workplace. There's a lot more to be done, and it has to be looked at. Different denominations, different communities, different geographics. There's no point having another review or another commission. It does need firm action, and it needs it now before more people die.
Okay, really appreciate you joining us, Marie van der
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Former President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Jake Willis-Simons, listening to all of that, and again, it is relevant when people are saying the government needs to do more, but not really saying that the government is doing enough. But if relevant to her personally, she was not a Labour Party supporter, so a member when she was President of the Board of Deputies British Jews, which is a cross-party, cross-views and no-views group. But it is relevant when the vast majority of Jews in this country vote Labour.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad, because you see we're in a situation now where anti-Semitism really has taken hold of the political left, and the further left you go, the more anti-Semitism there is. And that places Jews who naturally feel their politics are on the left in a really difficult position. I think it was coming through in that interview quite a lot, because she wants to vote for Labour because she is a Labour person through and through. Yes, she gave it up when she was president, but she then rejoined immediately afterwards. So she is Labour, but we live in a world where Jews, left-wing Jews, are having to choose between their politics and excusing anti-Semitism, and often they tie themselves in knots because they're placed in that position because there's so much anti-Semitism on the left.
Just briefly, do you trust that Keir Starmer, given his track record, is the and people go, oh well, he's got a Jewish wife, Jewish kid, but do you trust, given his track record, that he's going to tackle this issue?
No, of course he won't. I mean, to be honest with you, to put it in stark terms, I've already set my watch for the next attack, because the government has not changed what it's doing. Yes, it's given some more money to solve the problem, but that isn't sufficient by any stretch to deal with the scale of anti-Semitism in Britain. And the centre of gravity in British Jewry, Anglo Jewry, is very, very hostile indeed to this government, with very, very good reason. I mean, Carl, the caller earlier, talked about the government recognising a state of Palestine. When it recognised a state of Palestine, the hostages were still in the catacombs under Gaza.
And there was no condition of releasing the hostages. No, it was unforgivable. 10:50 is the time. I'm going to keep taking your calls, 0344 499 1000. We're also going to be talking about Labour and their civil war. Who is going to be the next leader? Because let's face it, we all know that Keir Starmer is a dead man walking. Is it going to be Angela Rayner? Is it going to be Ed Miliband? Where's tweeting? Who is it going to be? Andy Burnham, if you can get a seat. We'll talk about that up next with former Labour Party advisor. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:53 is the time. Lots of focus, of course, on that anti-Semitic attack in Golders Green. And as Jake Wallace-Summers, my guest, has pointed out, when the next attack is, because it's a when, not an if, and what's the government going to do about it. Still going to get to more of your calls. But I also want to tackle the small matter of who's going to be our Prime Minister in a matter of weeks. We've got the latest polling for the local elections from Lord Hayward, which suggests that Labour faces a thrashing. That is not too strong a term. The devastating poll predicting the party will lose 1,800 seats plus in those local elections. That ignores what's going to happen in Scotland and in Wales as well. And at the same time, he's facing that leadership challenge any moment now. Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband, Andy Burnham, if he can get back in to Parliament. Well, let's talk about all of this with Henry Murison, a former Labour Party advisor. Good morning to you, Henry.
Good morning, Julia. Lovely to join you as always.
Thank you very much on this gloriously happy day for the Labour Party. Look, there's no doubt at all, everyone knows that Keir Starmer is a dead man walking, whether it's in a few weeks, in a few months. He ain't running as Labour leader for the next general election. No one thinks that. Most people don't think he's going to make it to the end of the summer. But we're told, there's a big battle going on behind this about who's going to possibly take over. Angela Rayner's allies have apparently told people that Starmer's got to go and that Labour was made to look like the pedo protectors party by his decision to give Mandelson the job as our ambassador to the US when his links with Epstein were well known. Do you think Angela Rayner is the next Labour leader and our next Prime Minister?
I mean, clearly Angela is a huge political talent, and in my kind of day job nowadays, working in the north of England, I can say that she obviously remains hugely popular with members, but her poll ratings with the public are very much lower than they used to be, and that's a reflection of obviously the issues she's had with her tax affairs. And those tax
not paying due tax. False. Let's be honest, didn't pay the tax she was due.
Exactly. No, and I think you have to own that, if I'm honest, in terms of that issue. You can't squirm out of it, and people shouldn't squirm out of these things, Julia. Certainly not on your programme. And I think so. My view is that Angela is not even really suitable to be put back in the cabinet until those issues have been dealt with. And I think that's what most normal people out in the real world would think. And so as much as the parlour games within the Labour Party are obviously important to us all because they affect who's going to run the country, in a way, it's so far removed from the reality of places like Sheffield where there are elections at the moment.
OK, let's not talk about any specific places, please, for Ofcom reasons. But you're saying, look, that's not what people are talking about. Look, I mean, and people are certainly talking about, that, when the bins are going to be collected, the cost of living crisis and the price of petrol and diesel at the pumps. But there's no doubt she's popular. But the most popular candidate, according to Labour Party polling of Labour Party members who'll get for the final say, is Ed Miliband. And there's lots of talk about, Ed Miliband either being someone's chancellor or possibly running himself. Of course, he denies. No, of course not. Pearl clutching. Do you think Ed Miliband is viable, or do you think the markets would kill that off within a month, same as with Liz Truss?
I mean, I think clearly lots of people might agree with much of the things that Ed's doing. I know you don't from some of our previous discussions. Well, it's
because I know facts and I'm sane.
Well, I mean, I disagree with you on that, but I think that my starting point is that I don't think just going around randomly the cabinet and looking at who Labour Party members like is necessarily the solution to the Labour Party's political problem.
Who is the solution then?
Well, I don't think it is about an individual necessarily. Like, the Labour Party's problem is it's making lots of decisions that many people individually think are quite popular. The changes to renters' rights are quite popular, just come into effect. Lots of other policies that individually are quite popular. But why is it that the Labour Party can't win the political argument about why?
Well, because putting up taxes, when you said you wouldn't put up taxes, isn't popular. Loads of U-turns, calling everybody far right because they object to people being, kids being stabbed in the street or wanting a grooming gang scandal. I mean, that all comes down to the Prime Minister, doesn't it?
I think that in our political culture, Julia, it's a more existential question. We associate everything with who happens to be leader of the...
Well, the person making the final decision.
And I think that is one point of view, but I also think this is a wider issue about what was the Labour Party promising the last election, and that's broader than just...
What were they promising? We were just told it would be change.
Well, I think the argument was that they could fund better public services out of tax revenues that would come up because of growth. The issue is that takes time to happen, Julia.
No, it also takes the right tax policies, and every single thing that Rachel Reeves has done, international bodies, IMF and others have said that her tax policies have made that less likely to happen.
Well, I think you can argue about whether or not, and the business community, obviously, many, particularly smaller and medium-sized businesses, are very unhappy about the changes that have been made. But you could argue that the government didn't make enough of a case for why they were doing that. They didn't justify in the election that they were going to do it. They probably should have been straighter with people. I think those are the lessons that they need to learn. Just changing the Prime Minister doesn't change anything overnight. And I think whether it's Wes Streeting, whether it's Ed Miliband, whoever it is, these people all have particular talents and benefits they bring. But the wider issue is what would they change
do you know what,
the wider operation?
Do you know what I think the summary of what you've said, Henry, is that there isn't anyone very good at the top of the Labour Party to take over. That's what I heard from what you had to say. But, you know, we'll let our audience be the judge of that. Time's against us. It's 10:59. Henry Mewison, former Labour Party advisor. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. I'll get Jake Wallace-Simon's thoughts on what you had to say in a few minutes. Lots more of your calls coming in as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Coming up, we are going to be talking to Peter Blexley, our favourite former Met Police detective. Also going to be talking to trigonometry co-host Francis Foster, a former teacher, telling us about his new book, which is about why you absolutely shouldn't go into teaching as a job. It's an interesting take. All that coming up. And as I say, your calls on what the government should do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And we are fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. So much more to come, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Thank you so much for your company. I'm with you all the way until 1. If you've missed anything from the show or you missed anything when you, going out, having a life, that sort of thing, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. And as I keep on pointing out, I won't have to keep telling you to do that. And if you just do it the first time. Just pretend I'm your wife and I'm nagging you. Just do it the first time and I can stop saying it. We'll all be happy, right? Welcome to my home. Anyway, coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about that horrific anti-Semitic knife attack, a terror attack it's been declared by the Met Police in Golders Green yesterday, where 2 men were stabbed simply for, well, being Jewish. A 45-year-old man who's not just a Jewish problem, our problem, because this is not just an attack on 2 Jewish men, not just an attack on the Jewish community, not just an attack on Jews in Golders Green in North London, the 3rd or 4th in just a matter of weeks. Remember, this is very near to where those 4 ambulances were attacked in an arson attack just a few weeks ago. This is an attack on Britain, on our culture, on our values, on our way of life. And we need to all be stepping up. We need to all be speaking out as well. The government has said, there's no place for anti-Semitism in this country. On the contrary, Prime Minister, there does absolutely appear to be a place for anti-Semitism in our country. That's why it keeps on happening. The Home Secretary has announced that there's an extra £25 million going into security for Jewish communities. But unless 25 million quid is enough to protect every single Jewish man, woman and child on their way to work, school or sitting in a restaurant or on a bus stop like yesterday, I'm not quite sure that's going to really hack it. And why are we tackling the wrong end of the problem? Rather than insisting that Jews have to be protected or remove any sign of their identity to be safe, why don't we tackle the people who are causing them to be unsafe? Let's talk about the real problem and let's talk about what we really need to do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain. Give us a call. Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. You can also text us on 87222. You can send us a message on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost 1 standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking more about Labour and their leadership shenanigans going on behind the scenes. There's that local election poll predicting absolute disaster for Labour, even worse than many have been predicting at those local elections. And I'm going to be joined in the studio by comedian and podcaster Francis Foster to chat about his new book. I mean, it tells you exactly what it's about. Uneducated, My Life as a Teacher and Why You Should Never Become One. Can't wait to speak to him about that. Delighted to say that joining me in the studio all day today, or all day, I will let you out at 1, Jake Wallace-Simons, journalist and author. And I must just stress, I mean, in terms of you're the perfect guest to have on today, booked long before the horrific attack that we did see yesterday. But you have written 2 books about the issue of anti-Semitism, and I'm just looking up. You'll know the titles, but I'm just going to find Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred and what to do about it. Also, Never Again, how the West betrayed the Jews and itself. And both are very pertinent today, Jake. We just keep being told that anti-Semitism has no place, and we abhor this, and blah blah blah. We're going to tackle it, and this is an attack on all of us. But the reality is, nothing seems to be being done. We've seen this spate of anti-Semitism creep up since the Jeremy Corbyn days, the normalisation of anti-Semitism on the left, not just on the far fringes of the right, but on the left. The pro-Palestinian marches were the open, blatant anti-Semitism. They try and disguise it as anti-Zionism, anti-Israel. But when you look at some of the images, give me a break. This is stuff that was absolutely on the streets of Nazi Germany, openly by the Nazis. So let's not pretend it's anything but anti-Semitism. The spate of attacks since October 7th massacre, and again, the fact that anyone's response to a massacre of Jews is, let's go and shout abuse or threaten Jews in Britain because a country on the other side of the world has seen people attacked. That tells you what is going on. And it seems to be growing and growing. And the action from the government seems to be just more platitudes and a bit more cash. Is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we imagine a parallel universe in which Britain had a neo-Nazi problem and some, I don't know, Tommy Robinson fanatics or whatever it is, were targeting black businesses, smearing feces on black houses, targeting black children in the street, stabbing them, killing them, I think we would see a rather more robust government and police response in this country. And I suppose, Mike, the question that haunts me is how many attacks, how many deaths will it take for the government to get serious? What's the number? We've had 2 killings last year. We've had 2 more stabbings just the other day. We've had endless numbers of vandalism, including arson and intimidation. I mean, if you go to Golders Green and speak to Orthodox Jews, every single person will tell you their story, having been called names, spat at, harassed in the street or at their place of work. How much is going to be too much? Because so far, it's been okay. Platitude is what we get, a few more million quid to beef up security, but the basic problem continues unaddressed. And part of that problem is, of course, these marches, which Suella Braverman called hate marches and was then sacked for calling it hate marches while the marches continued week after week. The Gaza war finished months ago. These marches still continue. Something needs to be done about those. And let's not forget that those marches, it's not just about Israel and Jews, it's also about Britain and the West. They almost always end up defacing the statue of Winston Churchill in Parliament Square. They frequently menace the cenotaph, and they always chant against Britain, against the government. Palestine Action, the hardcore of these people, attacked RAF Bryce Norton. They hate the RAF as much as they do Israel and Jews. But they are against all of us, not just Jews. We just happen to be first in the firing line.
And have always been since time immemorial. And this is the point that many Jewish people have been making. It's not just against us; it is against the British way of life. And it's really important to understand, the constitution of Hamas and Hezbollah and the stated blatant aim of the Iranian revolutionaries running office in Tehran is the destruction not just of Israel but of the West, of America, the big Satan, Israel and Britain. We take turns being the little Satan. They hate us. They want us not to exist. I mean, Jews first. Then then non-Muslim, Muslim people who've left Islam, Catholics, Christians, atheists like me. We are all, we're all in the line. And this is the thing, isn't it? When we say, look, everyone needs to speak up. I attended a little protester demo at Golders Green. It's a place I know well. I have my family there. I've lived there. I know that place very well. So it felt very real to me. That attack yesterday, and I just went along, just basically as a citizen, to show my support at a rally from an organisation from non-Jews called Our Fight, and we did an interview on. Luckily, we had our cameraman nearby, and we did an interview with him and with Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary of the Jews, who's been very, very good on this, very strong on this issue. All credit to him. And about how this isn't something that the Jewish community should fight on their own. The Jewish community is tiny in this country. It's a few 100,000 people. This is something everyone needs to step up for, but not just for Jews, as you say, for Britain, for our values, for our culture. If there is any group of people, whether they are Jewish, Muslim, atheist, white, black, wherever, if they Christian, if they live in fear of being identifiable on the street, that they might get stabbed, or their place of worship, or their school, or their home, or their shops or restaurants could be under attack with a firebomb or with someone with a knife, or even just spray painted, that should be a problem for all of us.
That's right. But I feel like the luxury and complacency of post-war, certainly post-Cold War Britain, where much more is spent on welfare than defence, it means that we haven't got that sense of what it means to see an enemy, call it an enemy, and try to achieve victory over that enemy, because we're too busy doubting ourselves. Our dominant culture seems to me what I call niceism. It's all about niceism. You can't be nasty to anybody, even if they're trying to kill you. And Hezbollah, that you mentioned earlier, I mean, they literally, their salute is the Sieg Heil, is the Nazi salute.
They're telling us who they are.
It's a bit of a clue there, isn't it? The Iranian regime, which created Hezbollah and sponsors it, is carrying out and plotting terror attacks on our shores.
And we're told they may be behind. The Iranian-backed group is behind this attack.
And yet the Ayatollah's London office has not been closed down. He was killed in his office in Tehran. His London one remains open. The IRGC, the government has said they're finally going to ban it, haven't done so. Should have been done years and years ago.
They're basically the Iranian government's SS, aren't they? Islamic Revolutionary Guard.
Exactly right.
They're the ones who've been murdering, slaughtering young people in the street in their tens of thousands.
And the Nazi links are not accidental, because this modern jihadism came by a mixture, historically, between Nazism, Nazi ideology, and Islamism. It's that toxic cocktail that gave rise to the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and all the others.
And now in Britain we've got this toxic cocktail of the far-left, anti-capitalist, wokeism with Islamist extremism. We see this, massively played out within the Labour Party, and yes, under Keir Starmer, the pandering to the Islamist extremism over the recognition of Palestine and the like, and also certainly within Jack Polanski's Green Party, where there's an astonishing number of council candidates have expressed outrageous views.
And that's all sort of Soviet-era Cold War propaganda. All these slogans that are so common today, of Israel being a white supremacist state, of being the new Nazis, of being an apartheid state, of being settler colonial, all of those things, even genocide, those slogans were invented by Russian propagandists in the Cold War and pumped into the West on the left, and they've still embraced it. It's still going strong.
And the majority of the Muslim population in Israel supported the war in Gaza because they wanted to protect their nation state. Seriously, but again, it's the
Muslims
time.
Fought. The Muslims fight in the IDF. There's Captain Ella Wawaya is the most senior female Muslim IDF officer. They know which side of the fence they stand. Muslims were killed by Hamas on October the 7th, risked their lives to save Jews in Israel on October the 7th and thereafter. And they've been unequivocal, many of them, in their opposition to jihadism because they know what it means. But in Britain, we've got the luxury. It's not going to be our kids who are killed by these people, so therefore we can wag our fingers from afar.
And that's the thing. But this is the thing. We need to tackle the actual issues. You say we need to. You cannot tackle the enemy if you do not identify the enemy first. And the enemy is the enemy within, because we have imported this problem. This is the issue. I grew up in a very Jewish area in my teenage years, and although there have been guards at synagogues for time immemorial, not on the same. It was kind of going through the motions. Some idiot. Someone unacceptable ever. The risk of someone shouting abuse or something. But we are talking about people living in absolute fear now, and it's very different. Now, the Prime Minister didn't turn up to Golders Green yesterday. A statement saying that he would go as soon as possible. May, if you've actually got a load of police cars that can close the roads and you could just whiz up and ignore those red lights, you'd be surprised how quick you can get from Westminster to Golders Green. It's really, really quite a short drive. But far too busy yesterday. Home Secretary went, the local MP, Sarah Sapman, went.
She was booed.
Yeah, she was. Well, Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Chief, was there. I thought the booing was largely aimed at him. She herself is Jewish MP, but she's a Labour MP. But certainly, Shabana Mahmood said all the right things. She was there. Kimi Badenoch, the Tory leader, she was there as well, and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. But it's interesting that Keir Starmer hasn't gone. This morning, though, he has convened a meeting in Downing. He loves a meeting. If you solve everything, in Keir Starmer's world, you solve everything by making a statement or having a meeting.
Or being clear.
Very clear. No, let me be very clear.
Yeah, totally unacceptable.
You always know when the Prime Minister's about to tell you a lie, when he says, let me be very clear. He convened a meeting, and it's a really simple way of knowing. He convened a meeting in Downing Street with criminal justice agencies, and he said the criminal justice system must respond to the suspected terrorist attack in Golders Green in a, his quote, swift, agile and visible way. But again, 2021, blokes drove down in broad daylight, drove down through this area, through the central, for about an hour, shouting out on the megaphone they were going to kill Jews and rape their wives and daughters in broad daylight, on film, with their Palestinian flags. Although the 4 men were charged, none of them were prosecuted. The CPS didn't think they could get a conviction. I'm pretty sure you can convict every single man in that car. If you're in a car for an hour, people shouting that stuff, you are party to that. Doesn't matter who was shouting it. You all get done for it, as far as I'm concerned. That is part of the whole sort of conspiracy charges that people can face. That was 5 years ago. No one's ever been prosecuted for that. We see again and again very little action being done. People getting a slap on the wrist. Committing an arson attack and already being out on bail. the authorities are not taking it seriously. When you stand by as an entire police force in London and you watch tens of thousands of people march through London every fortnight, shouting the anti-Semitic slogans, shouting to globalise the Intifada, which means kill Jews worldwide, and you don't arrest anybody, but you do threaten Gideon Falter, guest on our show yesterday, from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, for walking there looking, as a police officer said, openly Jewish. Yeah. And he was there to say, I've got the right to be here and be safe, and no, because then you might provoke someone. If someone being, quote, openly Jewish will provoke people in that march, then that march needs to be banned. Now, I was someone who thought that those marches shouldn't be banned because I believe in freedom of speech, but the police should intervene and tackle the people who were shouting anti-Semitic slogans, the people committing the crimes. But the police have basically made it quite clear they're not going to do that.
Well, I think the problem is that the police are under, all the pressure is being placed on the police for decades of failed government policy. Yeah. I mean, the police can't arrest everybody. I mean, Marie van der Zyl, the former Board of Deputies leader, was on the show just earlier talking about how she thought that the marches should just be banned. Well, that's all very well to say, but how are you going to do it? If you get tens of thousands of people defying the ban and forming up in Hyde Park or Green Park or Trafalgar Square or wherever, that's a hell of a lot of arrests and a hell of a lot of policemen you're going to have to deploy to deal with that. Yeah. Forces are already stretched trying to deal with these things, let alone trying to suppress them entirely. We saw with Palestine Action that cack-handed proscription of that group, and it led to hundreds of arrests, and it then sort of ended in failure.
A load of 80-year-old former vicars being arrested.
And the problem is that this is a social problem that's been allowed to grow for decades upon decades with high levels of immigration, doing ourselves down, allowing university students to become radicalised, and the university system, the school system to become dominated by progressive radicals, and all the media and the arts, all the rest of it. So the culture is supporting anti-Semitism. The police just can't deal with all of that. And so what we need is a reverse course of a multi-platform policy that's going to tackle anti-Semitism in the NHS, for example, of which there is a worrying amount.
I mean, Jews literally hiding the fact that they're Jewish because they're worried that they won't be treated properly or they're at risk.
Exactly, yeah, or kicked out of the bed onto the floor, as happened to a Jewish boy a couple of years ago.
This is terrifying stuff, isn't it? But again, culture is supporting and promoting this, and that's been allowed to continue to happen again. And I'm sorry, this started, I think it's exploded since October the 7th, and everyone's pretending their anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. It's not, it's anti-Semitism. It's just hate. Call it what it is. You hate Jews. But at least be honest about it, so we can then debate you.
Or they just hate Israelis, which is like, why is that okay?
Yeah.
Hating a whole nation rather than...
Yeah, but also, again, it's like, you defend the right of Israel to exist. Yes, in the same way I defend the right of Britain to exist, France to exist, Russia to exist. Yeah, countries exist, Get over it, is what I would say in response to that.
It's the right not to be killed. I mean, that's a pretty fundamental right.
Yeah,
the right
absolutely.
Not to be
and also, I mean, there's stuff, even Radio 4 today, we're talking about as a march coming up, marking the anniversary of the Nakba, which is when he said, Nick Robertson said, when Palestinians were Arabs were expelled from Israel. Yeah, no, I think you'll find that Jews were also expelled from every Arab country. That was kind of the deal. That was kind of what happened, when the State of Israel was created. But again,
after the Arabs started the war.
After the Arabs started the war, but again, most people don't have to know this stuff. They shouldn't have to know this stuff. It should be irrelevant to what happens on the streets of Britain. But we've imported it. Why have we imported it? Because we've imported millions, not tens of thousands, millions of people from third world countries where anti-Semitism is not just rife, it is the norm. In Pakistan, in the Middle East, in large parts of Africa, it is the norm. So why are people surprised it's happening? If you look at the people who are being arrested, who are being charged for anti-Semitic crimes, they're not largely called John Smith. It's not Brenda from Somerset. We've not got a massive issue with a load of...
few Tallulahs here and there.
Few Tallulahs, but we just... If you look at the people who are being arrested... No, but it's not... There is a clear pattern of people who are committing these crimes. Look, let's look at the Malson who's under arrest right now. 45-year-old man, described yesterday as a British national born in Somalia. By the way, it took an awfully long time for the police to actually give a proper description, like to tell us this man's national heritage, let's go with. He's not a British national, okay? He's a Somali. He was born in Somalia. And he came to Britain, we're told by the Home Secretary this morning, as a child, and he was given British citizenship. Now, if I went to live in Somalia, even at the age of, let's say, 4, right, I don't think I'd be Somali, even if I got Somali citizenship. I would be a British person who has, for some bizarre reason, got Somali citizenship. We understand the difference. It's like the whole Welsh choir boy nonsense about Axel Rudikabana. I mean, let's call people what they are. He's a Somali who's got the right to live in this country. The question is why he has the right to this country. Presumably he came over with his parents in this wave of refugees who arrived 80s and 90s during the Somali civil war. Now, one thing, we don't know his name, we know his age, we don't know where he lives, we don't know anything else, but we do know he has a history of mental illness. That was released quite early by the authorities, and a history of serious violence as well. My guess is he'll been referred to Prevent, and they have failed to prevent. We may well be in similar territory to where we are with Axel Rudikabana, who of course, the child of Rwandan immigrants who had a massive history of mental illness and serious violence, but nothing was done. The Nottingham killer, Valdo Calocane, again, a massive history of serious violence and mental health, nothing is done. We are talking about, yet again, it would appear, an abject failing by every single institution of the state that has left two men in hospital, thankfully not dead, but that's a matter of luck when someone is repeatedly stabbed at a bus stop rather than a predictable outcome. That's right, and the figures on the Somali population in Britain speak for themselves, with 47% economically inactive is the term. On benefits. On benefits, not working. Near me, all of the council estates are Somali 72% heritage. in social housing, huge levels of crime, gang crime, knife crime, drugs and so on and so forth in Tower Hamlets and elsewhere. One of them, as I said earlier, killed David Amos MP in 2021. No, that doesn't mean that every Somali person who's come here, refugee, what you're saying about what you're saying about Britishness and I mean, being British is a complicated thing. It's not simply a matter of having a passport, but nor simply is it a matter of skin colour. I mean, what you're not saying is that you cannot be black and British. Of course you can. It's a complex mixture of different things. Ethnicity is one part of it, but so is culture, and the passion with which you embrace our country and our values and want to be a part of this great project of Britain, or what used to be the great project. I would have thought, at the very least, if you've come to this country as a refugee, well, don't stab Jews, but I mean, I kind of expect you to get a job. Well, that would help. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Before we came on air, I was talking about this woman I know locally, a Ukrainian refugee who came to live near us. Was first living with a host family. She's got some kids. Then left as soon as she could because she didn't want to be a burden. Rather than going on benefits, got a job, fairly low-paid job. Lives in a very tiny place with lots and lots of kids. But she wants to stand on her own 2 feet and give back to this country which gave her sanctuary. That's the same attitude you find in the Jewish community, the Chinese community, the Indian community, the Sikh community, and many other immigrant communities. But there are some communities like the Somalis that don't seem to have got the memo. They seem to be coming here for what they can take out rather than what they give. But again, or not being required to deliver. I mean, again, we're waiting to find out more information about this man. But again, there's going to be lessons. There will be a report on lessons learned. You can guarantee that. Look, there's so much to talk about on this. I want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000. I do also want to talk at some point in this hour about where we are with that Labour leadership, those battles. But time is racing through for us. But we're going to take a quick break right now, and then we're going to take your calls and get some of your messages coming in through thick and fast on this gold screen attack. Question is clear. What should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? Because I'm not entirely sure they are really on the case. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a director of communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:29 is the time. Let's go straight to your calls. Nigel, who's on the line in London, wants to have his say. Good morning to you, Nigel. I know I didn't get to you yesterday, and I did want to talk to you yesterday, but I'm glad we've got you on the line today.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting show yesterday, as it is today, and I understand that there's lots to talk about, so thank you very much. There's 3 points I'd like to make, if I may. First of all, when you say what's the government going to do about it, well, unless they recognise there's a problem, they can't do anything about it, and clearly they don't recognise there's a problem. That's the first point. The second point is, I think it's now time for the police to be armed. If you look at the footage very, very carefully, the 2 brave police officers retreated at first. They weren't too sure what was happening. This person should have been neutralised straight away.
Oh, I mean, God, shoot him in the head. I think the police have absolutely failed. And again, and so has the Crown Prosecution Service. There's just been abject failure of leadership on that. Can I ask you, can I go back to the issue of police being armed? I mean, this is what's the interesting thing is why there wasn't an armed police unit that could arrive much sooner. I mean, you know, the man is alive. That's probably a good thing. I just got no issue with someone who's knifed 2 people and is racing around trying to knife other people being shot by the police. Thank you very much. Shake your hand, officer. Thank you. I mean, actually, it was the local community support, protection officers who were on the scene who chased this guy down. And in fact, some of the footage you were seeing, body cam images from the police, which had been put out, interestingly, very quickly yesterday. But actually, it was actually one of the guys from the local, community security that was actually trying to get the knife off this guy. What do you make? There's quite a lot of debate online about the fact that, I mean, we can't show some of these images. We're actually not allowed to. But some of the images where you see the police, when they're screaming and shouting, give us a knife, give us a knife. And this guy, despite being tasered, is clearly not giving up the knife. They're trying to turn him over. They can't. And the police repeatedly kick the alleged knifeman in the head. A lot of people are saying that wasn't necessary. The police have defended that as part of their training. What did you make of that? Was it extreme violence or was it necessary?
Well, it's a very close call, isn't it? I think that to try and disorientate him, that's the action that they chose. One could say they could have taken out an asp and whacked him across the hand. But did you see the police message last night, Julia, where this person was allegedly involved in another incident in southeast London? Yeah.
I haven't come to that actually yet, but that's because we don't know. We don't know for sure that they were investigating whether he was exactly. On the same day.
But I think that in reality, if going back to my original point, if police were armed, there would be no kicking, there'd be no fisticuffs. It would have been over in
But police being armed doesn't prevent the crime in the first place.
Absolutely not. It doesn't. But you see, the thing about it is, if you look at a lot of cop programs, and I sadly do, when you have a police officer who has the ability to release lethal force should he or she need to. The amount of respect that they get back in return, because they know that if they mess about and draw a weapon, it could be the end of it. There is a huge difference to 2 cops arriving who perhaps just have a taser. And let's say, for instance, which is really important, not every police officer in London has a taser.
No, and that's extraordinary, isn't it? That should be a bare minimum, shouldn't it? Thank you for that, Nigel. I don't know if actually, I think Jake Wallace-Simons, we certainly know the police don't want to be armed. I mean, they're facing prosecution when they kill, someone who's blatantly a threat to them. I mean, lots of police officers simply refuse to do that. But clearly there needs to be more. I mean, those police officers and the community security people were unbelievably brave, attacking a madman on the loose with a knife.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that footage, that was my first thought.
If there was an armed police unit somewhere near a very Jewish area, given the spate of attack,
that's what it should be.
I find that extraordinary that wasn't the case. Let's go to Martin, who's in Exeter. Hello, Martin. What do you want to say?
Hello, Julia. I grew up in North London in the 60s, lived there for 40 years. I am I'm Jewish. I am incandescent with rage right now, so I'm talking to you very calmly. So I want to give you a parallel.
Yep.
The Jewish community are the Batley Grammar School teacher. So what should have happened when the Batley Grammar thing kicked off, the police should have gone in there. If that didn't work, the riots police should have gone in there. If that didn't work, the army should have gone in there. The government should have sent a clear message to those people, most of whom didn't even have pupils at that school, say, no matter what, this teacher is coming to school.
And also, by the way, not a single person who made apparently credible enough death threats that man and his family are still in hiding, not a single person was prosecuted.
Correct. And what they're doing, I mean, I'm sorry, but I have to tell it like it is. I can hardly get my words out.
It's okay.
But we know that members of the government are, let's say, worried about their seat and worried about the civil unrest. Mm-hmm. What many people forget is after the Batley Grammar School, there was a film that was authorised by the British film doodah, whatever it is, and the Muslims protested and blockaded all the cinemas, and the film was withdrawn. Yep. So what happens is appeasement is empowerment.
Yeah. Yep.
And unless they stopped it, I mean, Batley was actually a line in the sand. That teacher should be teaching. The government should have sent a clear message saying, we are not going to put up with this no matter what. So no wonder yesterday happened. And may I say, and then I'll stop talking, may I say that the trial of those two guys at Manchester Airport is on.
Okay, is ongoing. We need to be very careful about that. So I'm going to stop you there just to play safe. We don't want to in any way impact on that trial. Martin, I can feel your anger, and it's totally justified. We feel it with you. Martin and Exeter there. 11:36 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking to someone I know will be on side on this, former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. What does he think the government should do? What does he think the police can do? Does he think, along with Martin and I think many of us, that the police have actually failed so far to tackle this issue? And what about, the kicking of that suspect? And, police have defended that. An awful lot of the do-gooders online very unhappy about it. But what would they have done to get that knife off that man's hands? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:38 is the time. Let's talk to Peter Blexley now, former Metropolitan Police Detective, about that attack in Golders Green, one of many that we've seen on the Jewish community and indeed on our way of life in recent weeks. Peter, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I want to get your reaction first, if you would, to the scenes we've seen. And we've been playing some of the body cam footage and some other video footage of the police officer, two police officers, one who tases this 45-year-old Somali-born man, who's man.
Certainly. The deployment of a taser on somebody sometimes only creates incapacity of a few seconds. It's not like once they're tasered, they are out of the game for minutes or hours. Far from it. So it was clearly vital that the officers still took the weapon from him after the taser had been deployed. And from the footage that I'm seeing, they used perfectly proportionate, appropriate, necessary force to keep this man incapable of committing further acts and have him disorientated so that they could bravely wrestle the weapon from him.
So it would be deliberate to kick him in the head. I mean, it looks, again, after the Manchester airport attack, we say this is still, going through the courts. People, again, I was horrified by seeing some of the initial footage we saw. But this is someone who, they could have suspected, well, they knew he had a knife, but they also may well reasonably suspected he had some sort of improvised explosive device on him as well.
Well, for an experienced broadcaster like yourself, I'm rather shocked to hear that you had a flaky moment. I hope it.
I think we had 3 police officers that day who criticised it. Actually, the initial footage.
Well, that's a matter for them. I personally believe that to keep somebody who is still armed, who is known to have stabbed people, to create disorientation in their brain by kicking them is a very valid tactic. Keep them disorientated, keep them confused, keep them in a mixed kind of situation about what is going on, while courageous people try and remove the knife.
So totally reasonable behaviour. What did you think of Sir Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Chief? He attended Gold Screen very soon after, alongside the local MP, Sarah Sackman, and he was booed. I mean, it was very much aimed at him, I think. I mean, also Sackman, the local Labour MP, and when he was talking about, taking action and, antisemitism, the usual platitudes we hear, he got booed. What do you make of that and of the police action/inaction we have seen in recent weeks, months and years over tackling anti-Semitism?
Right, firstly, the criticism and the heckling that he received yesterday comes as no surprise to me, because Sir Mark Rowley has presided over the Metropolitan Police whilst they have appeased the Palestinian lot. And by that, I mean those pro-Palestine marchers who have so often just chanted genocidal chants, called for the abolition of an entire faith and behaved appallingly. There was appeasement, appeasement, appeasement. And that, in some way, has led us to where we are today. So I understand that criticism. Secondly, your question about what can the police do? Well, let's face it, for the Notting Hill Carnival, the Metropolitan Police can scramble together 6,000 officers or so. When we had widespread disorder following the Southport massacre, the police nationally scrambled about 5,000 officers or so. The threat to the Jewish community is that serious now that we need to see the mobilisation of huge numbers of officers, whether they're drawn in from outside forces. The government must fund it. We must make our Jewish friends safe.
But realistically, no amount of officers, I mean, talk about Notting Hill Carnival or a spate of riots or marches, those are one-off or 2 or 3 day events. We can't just have enough officers to escort every Jewish child to school or every single Jewish home or shop or restaurant. I mean, that's the reality, and they're all facing attack. What we need to do, surely, is tackle the root cause, and I would say that the root cause is we have imported a whole load of people from the third world, from countries where and cultures where it is absolutely the norm to be anti-Semitic and to justify such attacks. And if you don't tackle that issue, you're not going to deal with it.
Of course, but that was not the question you asked me. You asked me what should the police do about it, and so I answered that. Of course, we have willingly opened our doors and had vermin, filth, murderous scum from so many different parts of the world flood into this country at reckless, dangerous, life-threatening levels, and that has to be tackled. But that's a somewhat different issue.
Yeah, absolutely. We're told that this man is a 45-year-old British national born in Somalia. I mean, so a Somali who's been given British nationality apparently came here as a child. But we've also learned, in fact, we've not got his name. I know some organisations have already got his name. That's not been publicly released. But he's got a history of mental illness and of serious violence. It may well be that we are in the territory of Axel Rudikabana, Valdo Calacane, other people who had history of both such things. No action taken, referred to prevent, nothing happened, or mental health agencies failing to keep someone who's dangerous behind, in some sort of secure unit. Do you suspect that that is also what we're going to hear this time round?
Yes, I fear it is. It's been widely reported that he had mental health problems and a history of violence. If anybody wants to know how the British system fundamentally fails and allows murderous people to take innocent lives, then listen to the current ongoing Nottingham inquiry into the actions of Valdo Calacane. It tells you everything to know about how quickly, how rapidly and how dangerously this country is going down the pan.
What would you do if you were in charge today, which by the way, I think we all agree you should be? What should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? What would you do?
I would first of all, as I said earlier, mobilise considerable numbers of police officers onto the streets of areas where we know there are significant numbers of Jewish people living. But the question's a much bigger one than that. We have to strip out the liberalism, the progressiveness, the wokeism, the nonsense that has polluted all our public services, our education, health system, policing, and so much more, and swing the pendulum back to where common sense applies, where people are not afraid to stand up and say, this is a dangerous person, they need to be locked up.
Absolutely. Peter Blexley, always good to talk to you, a former Metropolitan Police detective. Peter Blexley there. Just to give you some breaking news, Alfie Coleman, a 21-year-old from Essex, has just been convicted at the Old Bailey after a retrial, convicted of preparing for terrorist acts. He's a young neo-Nazi found guilty of preparing a mass gun attack after being caught by MI5 in an undercover sting. From the age of 14, he'd been trawling the internet for extreme right-wing material, including a neo-Nazi text which he downloaded on his iPad. And he went on to compile a hate list of colleagues and customers he branded as race traitors, and he penned a manifesto and identified potential targets, including a mosque, and was caught by undercover officers from MI5. Thank goodness. But I tell you what, Jake Wallace-Simons, there are going to be so many people on the left going, look, the problem is the neo-Nazis. Except, of course, these are far, far rarer events, far, far fewer of these people than we've got on, frankly, the other side of the political divide.
And thank goodness for that. I mean, you know, we're blessed in this country so far, have been traditionally, that we haven't had much of a taste for fascists. You know, Oswald Mosley in that period aside, the Mitfords and so forth, but on the whole, we haven't had much of a taste for that. Unlike the Americans, where the far right is lethal, even more lethal than the far left.
That's not the issue that the counter-terrorism people are looking at. Vast majority of those people on the watch list are Islamist extremists, not far right, indeed. We're going to have to leave it there. 11:47 is the time. Jake Wallace-Simons is going to stay with me till later. We're going to also have the co-host of the Trigonometry podcast and author Francis Foster coming in to talk about his brand new book about basically why he, as an ex-teacher, thinks that you don't want to go into teaching. You want to stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have use that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a director of communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Lots more top guests to come. More from Jake Wallace-Simons as well. More of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch, particularly about frankly, what should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain in the wake of yet another attack, this time 2 men stabbed in Golders Green. But we're going to have a little bit of a lighter moment right now, and we're going to be talking to my next guest. I'm so glad he's joined us in the studio. Francis Foster is a comedian. He's also co-host of the, can I just say, utterly brilliant trigonometry podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Francis.
Well, thank you for having me.
And I kind of say, if you don't listen, if you have never, I mean, how have you've managed to miss it? It's an absolutely superb podcast. I learned so much. So there's wonderful long-form interviews talking to serious experts on big issues, and it's for me, it's an absolute must listen, I have to say. But you're here to talk about something you touched on a lot in trigonometry, which is your former life as a teacher, and you've written a brand new book, and I'm sure we can put the book up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. Uneducated, the unbit is in brackets. My life as a teacher and why you should never become one. Now, we've had a lot of teachers on this show, ex-teachers, current teachers, and they always say it's such a rewarding job and how important it is, younger generation. You've done the job, and you're saying, for the love of God, don't do this. Why?
Well, look, first of all, it's one of the most important jobs you can do.
Oh, here he goes.
No, but I need to make this clear, because when I was teaching, I've met incredible people doing trigonometry, interviewed some of the best, like yourself, Julia. But the reality is some of the most inspirational people I've ever met, some of the people who are actually fundamental to society when it comes to actually changing lives, are teachers. Yeah. However,
and we all remember our best teachers and our worst teachers, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll remember the one teacher, or maybe there were a couple of teachers that inspired you, maybe, and it changed the course of your life. But I think that what I'm trying to make through the book, and number one, I want to make the point, the book is really funny, it's tongue-in-cheek, it's all of those things, but it's really that broken systems create broken outcomes and broken people.
Yeah.
And the reality is our education system is broken. The average teaching career lasts for around 5 years, including training. And when you think about how much we put into training people, and nobody goes into teaching because they want a rock star lifestyle. Nobody thinks, oh, I'm going to go...
What about the holidays?
Well...
Oh, no, you're all preparing lessons for the 13 weeks of the summer, are you?
Look, no, for the summer holidays, granted, absolutely. 5 weeks of the summer is brilliant. But the rest of the time, you're kind of working from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening, 6 or 7 days a week. When you do get a holiday, what you're essentially doing is you're factoring time to get sick, and then you recover from getting sick.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
But in terms of a lifestyle, as you say, the book is very funny. But the key thing here is also that the children are kind of... There's a load of admin. There's a lot of stuff that teachers complain about, the admin, government telling you this, that, on the curriculum. But actually, it's standing in the classroom with a bunch of children, 30 kids if you're lucky. And the children are the thing that makes it, but also the children are the thing that breaks it. The people I know who've gone into teaching, and like you said, last 5 years, always say, I couldn't do the kids anymore. What's the issue there? Because you mentioned a little bit about certainly what kids arrive, when they arrive at school, what state they're in.
Well, look, I always remember there's a couple of years ago now, thankfully we don't really have this conversation as much in the UK, where we were talking about decolonising the curriculum. And people used to say to me, like, Francis, what do you think about decolonising the curriculum? I mean, and my response was always the same. It's very difficult to do that when someone's about to throw a chair at your head.
Yes.
And the reality is that just like in life, most people are great, just like most kids are great, but there is a small percentage of kids who are disruptive, who destroy every lesson that they enter, and we don't deal with them effectively. In fact, we pander to them, which is bad for the teacher, it's bad for the kids in the classroom, and it's bad for the kids that get pandered to.
I always worry about the other 29 kids, not the one. I remember when Tony Blair brought in that policy that, you know, we shouldn't be expelling kids. Oh, we should absolutely be expelling more children.
We should absolutely be expelling more children, but what we also need, and this is a point I make in my book, those kids who get expelled, who have behavioural difficulties, which is what we call kids who come in and create mayhem, they also have needs, and their needs aren't being met.
No,
so
indeed.
this attitude of like, oh, you know, let's be nicer to the kids by expelling them is failing the 29 kids in the class and the one kid and the teacher.
But you talk about in the book about, you know, your first lesson was a disaster, but also how many lessons are ruined by what children have. Well, it's not just the parenting that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, I'm a much older generation than you, but certainly of generations where if you got told off at school, you got another telling off and a punishment at home. Now parents are like, why'd you tell my kid off? I mean, it's a completely different attitude. But also, you know, what they're arriving, you know, they've been up all night, been on their computer games, on their phones, but what they're consuming in the morning, and it ain't muesli.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the number of times I taught kids and they were off the wall. And I was like, what's going on? And then you see them walk into class with a can of Monster. And then
tell people what Monster is for those who don't know.
OK, so imagine cocaine in liquid form.
Right.
With some carbon dioxide put in for bubbles. And that is what a lot of kids are drinking. And we're going, oh, these kids have ADHD. Of course, some of them do. Oh, they can't focus, they can't concentrate. And we're like, well, you've been on an iPad for 10 hours. You went to bed at 3 in the morning. Then when you got up, you basically mainlined liquid meth. And then you walked into a classroom.
And now I, Francis Foster, as a teacher, I'm going to be expected to teach you geography.
Yes.
Or something, you know.
Yeah.
You were a drama teacher, weren't you?
I did drama for 6 years, and then I retrained and I did primary for 6 years.
Yeah. I mean, lots of people still want to be teachers, it's their dream. And let's face it, there are a lot of people who say, well, there aren't many jobs out there, I'll be a teacher. There's that old line, those that can do, those that can't teach.
That was George Bernard Shaw.
Yeah, and those that can't teach become PE teachers, in my experience, my comp. Do you think that there are a lot of people who are being driven out of teaching, like you, who just say, well, it's just not a life I want, dealing with this. Teachers are being expected to do too much. Parenting, policing, social work, not just teaching.
Well, absolutely, because as a teacher, you're now expected to be a full-time administrator, you're expected to be a full-time teacher, and you're meant to be a full-time social worker. And the reality is, like, if you want to be able to do all those jobs, as a teacher you can do, but then you have to sacrifice everything at the altar of your career. And the reality is that you can do that for a few years, but eventually people go, well, I want more from my life. I want to be able to have a private life. So the reality is, no, you can't do it all. And we expect too much of teachers. And this idea that there's no, I remember there's this saying, there's no bad kids, only bad lessons. And you're going, anybody who says that is, number one, a moron with no experience of life, and number two, has never, ever tried to teach.
No, I would love to go into a classroom and teach, but only if I had someone standing next to me who was ex-SAS armed and literally was saying, sit down, shut up, the lady is talking to you. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't dare do it.
Yeah.
Because because I'd be in prison, because I would start hitting kids. I've never hit a child in my life, but I would. But I think there are a lot of kids, though, who probably do need hitting. Things we're not supposed to say out loud, but we're all thinking.
Well, it's so funny because I remember I was teaching a lesson and there was this kid in front of me, and every lesson he disrupted every lesson. And I remember at one point halfway through the lesson, I said the words, which I thought I said in my head.
Don't say it if you're not allowed to say it.
I said, why are you such a bleep? And I realised that I said it to the entire class.
Oh,
and they
I'd
all
have loved you as a teacher.
And they all looked at me, and then one sweet little girl just made eye contact with me and went, because he just is.
Well, that's the sort of story that is in this. But Francis Foster, I wish time was with us. But again, unlike your podcast where you can talk, we only had about 10 minutes. Francis Foster, comedian, co-host of the brilliant Trigonometry podcast, author of this brilliant new, very funny book, Uneducated, My Life as a Teacher and Why You Should Never Become One. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Julia. Thank you for having me on.
We will. I'm sure we'll come back to you again another day and future books and other jobs we shouldn't do. Up next, we'll take the news. We'll get to more of your calls. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. It's great to have your company. I'm with you all the way till 1 o'clock. If you missed anything on the show, don't forget to go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more, of course, about that horrific anti-Semitic attack in Golders Green in North London yesterday. 2 men stabbed, still in hospital. We've had lots of words, all telling us about how anti-Semitism has no place in our country, in our society, and yet it apparently does, because this is just the latest of a spate of anti-Semitic attacks. But what is the government going to do about it? What should they do about it? Extra 25 million for security for police. Is that really going to make a difference? I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1 standard network rate message. Now, those 2 Jewish men who were stabbed yesterday, as I say, still in hospital. Certainly one of them has made the point from an interview from his hospital bed that he feels that not enough is being done. The suspect there has been identified as a 45-year-old man. We're told he's a British national born in Somalia. Makes to me a Somalian who has been given British citizenship. He came here as a child, we know, but we also know he had a long history of mental health problems and of serious physical violence as well. Now, an Iranian-linked terror group has claimed responsibility for the attack. It has been designated a terror attack, but we still do not yet know the full identity of this man and his motivations. Meanwhile, we're also going to be talking about the latest madness from Ed Miliband, the Net Zero Secretary. He wants to stamp out the sale of traditional tumble dryers. Apparently, we're all going to have heat pump alternatives. Not in my house, we're not, Ed Miliband. And why have oil prices jumped to their highest rate since 2022, $125 a barrel of crude oil, amid fears of an escalation in the Iran war by President Trump in the wake of some of his latest postings. Just to let you know, in relation to all of this, because of the inflationary pressures of the oil price, we have just seen interest rates, which many had predicted would start to come down from the Bank of England. Yet again, the MPC at the Bank of England has announced they are held interest rates 3.75%. Big issue. A lot of people who've still got fixed rate mortgages or coming off them and finding those rates are not going down. Look, lots more to talk about. I want to hear from you as well. Delighted to say Jake Wallace-Simons, journalist and author, is still with me in the studio. And we've also been joined by Lord Wolfson, Shadow Attorney General and Conservative peer as well. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Jake and I have been discussing, and our audience joining in the conversations on the phone, what the government should do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain. Clearly not enough is being done because we keep seeing more of them. A lot of criticism of the Prime Minister yesterday for not going to Golders Green. His Home Secretary, the Shadow Home Secretary, the Tory leader, the Metropolitan Police Chief all did go. We were told he would go as soon as possible. I've been just given some information. I understand that he is actually arriving in Golders Green right now. I dread to think what reaction he's going to get from local people. But what should the government be doing?
Well, what they are doing is they're doing the 2 things that governments always do in this situation, which is, 1, we have, as you say, the usual words of there is no place for this in our society, and thoughts and prayers with the Jewish community. Yep. And 2, they are increasing funding, which all governments have done. This is not a party political issue, to the Community Security Trust to protect our synagogues, to have guards outside our schools, and generally to provide some physical security. Now, both of those are good. They are necessary, but they're not sufficient. They are palliative care. They are not going to reassure the Jewish community as to our future here.
This is kind of putting a bandage over the sort of infected sore, surely, rather than actually the antibiotics that are needed.
Well, what I think, to use that medical metaphor, what I think we need to do is to identify what the disease is. Because unless you know what disease you're suffering from, you can't begin to work out what the cure is.
And what is your idea?
The concern I have is that when I listen to too many government ministers, the 2 phrases which never cross their lips are 1, Islamist extremism, and 2, jihadism. And anti-Semitism is a shape shifter. Lord Sachs, the previous chief rabbi, called it a mutating virus.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in different shapes at different times. So now as a kid in the 70s, anti-Semitism mainly came from the far right.
Yep.
What we're seeing now, the main driver of anti-Semitism that we're seeing on our streets is Islamist extremism. And the first thing the government needs to do is to be clear about that and to call it out. Because unless you're willing to identify the problem, unless you're able to identify the problem, you've got no hope of finding a solution.
Isn't part of the problem, though, that saying, oh, it's this thing over there, Islamist extremism, ignores the very, very large herd of elephants in the room, which is that Islamist extremism has in lots of ways been embraced by far too many in the political mainstream, from Jeremy Corbyn when he was Labour leader, and by the way, small point, Keir Starmer, who wanted to root out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, was quite happy to be in his shadow cabinet. Others refused to serve, or others left the Labour Party, Lord Austin and others, because of his pandering to Islamist extremism and to anti-Semitism. We've got a left-wing. The Green Party under Zach Polanski, the candidate who openly celebrated October the 7th massacre of Jews in Israel, the pandering to the pro-Palestinian cause, the failure to police the pro-Palestinian marches, which have become and descended into hate marches. Perhaps they always were, as Suella Braverman called out when she was Home Secretary and lost her job for that. If they call out Islamist extremism, they're going to be upsetting an awful lot of people who think that, well, it's not extremism. It's being nice. It's being honest. It's calling out, quote, Zionists, Israel, genocidists, baby killers. Those are the people they go to dinner parties with.
Yeah. Look, there is a real problem. I think one way of putting it is that we may not be in a country, I hope we're not in a country, where attacking Jews gets you votes. But I'm afraid we are in a country where defending Jews can lose you votes. And that is a real problem. But it's not just the politicians. I think it's a mistake to focus only on politicians and government. I want to put down a challenge to civil society. I want to be able to come on this programme and say to your viewers, come and join the big march that's taking place in London this weekend to support the Jewish community, a march that's being organised by our main anti-racist organisations and charities. I'd love to say that, but I can't. Why? Because they haven't organised one.
Yeah.
They haven't organised one.
There is a big march, I think, the 10th of May.
Organised by the Jewish community. And this is the problem. We can't do it on our own. We need the support of civil society. We need the support of the silent majority. I'm sure the silent majority is horrified at what is taking place. But the main problem with the silent majority is that they're silent. And I would really urge people, do not remain silent. Make your voices known.
Yes, I certainly said. I said this when I went to Golders Green yesterday, which is somewhere I know most family members live around there, and I've lived around there, and wanted to show my solidarity. And it was with an organisation called Our Fight, who get non-Jews saying we want to stand with our Jewish fellow citizens. And we talk about silence is no longer an option. A lot of people will ask themselves, what would I have done? What have I done in the 1930s in Nazi Germany? Would I have hidden Anne Frank? Would I have stood up to the Nazis? And the answer is, what did you do during lockdown? Because I have a funny feeling you'd have just sat in your house and kept quiet, and that's the reality. The thing is about politicians and about metropolitan police chiefs or hospital bosses or head teachers, or all those people, bosses of chancellors of universities, is they do have the power to take action. We have not seen action taken to tackle anti-Semitism, which doesn't involve people ending up in hospital or people having to, repair arson damage or paint daubed all over, an Israeli restaurant and the like. But nevertheless, that sort of ongoing issue where, Jewish friends of my daughter chose their universities based on where they thought they would be safe after advice from other Jewish students. I work with a charity called Stand With Us who actually, educate students on how they can stand up to anti-Semitism on campus. No one should ever have to be part of such an organisation. These organisations shouldn't exist. So how do we get to a situation where those who are leading in civil society, as you say, but do have power in a way that ordinary people listening to the show, watch the show, don't? How do we get to a position where they do their duty?
Well, part of it does come back to government, because government can give a political and moral lead as well as a legal lead. And that's why I want to see politicians calling out Islamist extremism. That's why I want to see politicians referring to jihadism. But, you know, I used to live in a country where you could walk into a synagogue in the same way as you'd walk into a church.
Yeah.
I'd just like to live in that country again. I don't think it's too much to
And
ask.
it has changed. A
It's
lot of people say there's
absolutely
always been guys, because it has changed. And what has changed? Because I think the issue is, and the thing that everyone's trying to skirt around and everyone's being comfortable at, is if you look at when you see the spate of anti-Semitic attacks, and by them people will say, oh, there are far more attacks on the Muslim community. Well, yeah, there in numbers there are, but we've got 4.5 million Muslims and a few hundred thousand Jews per head of the population. It's about 8 times worse for Jewish people. I'm not saying any of these attacks are acceptable, but let's talk about where the real issue is. But when you look at the names, that's all we can go on. When you look at the names of the people who are charged and convicted, there is a clear pattern, and they're not called John Smiths, right? You know that and I know that. Have we imported this problem?
I don't know whether we've imported it, but as I say, the current spate of anti-Semitism is inspired by Islamist extremism and jihadism. And the point you make about the comparing anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim attacks is a very important one. Of course, all these attacks are reprehensible.
Yep.
I mean, we're not going to get into a comparative suffering analysis. But the point to add to your analysis is this. Jewish people suffer proportionately, something like, as you say, 6 to 8 times the number of attacks that the Muslim community does. They are half as likely to be prosecuted. Right. Half as likely to be prosecuted. So what we want to see, we being the Jewish community and also we as the Conservative Party, is the Crown Prosecution Service taking this more seriously, the police taking it more seriously. When I say the police, I don't mean the rank and file police. They do an amazing job in difficult circumstances. I mean the police leadership. We saw, for example, what happened in Birmingham. At the first whiff of a threat of mob violence, the response of West Midlands Police with the Aston Villa football match was to say, right, we'll ban the Israelis. Yep. Not we'll deal with the mob, but we'll ban the Israelis. We need to have a complete rethink as to the way we deal with these issues.
But we've had that again and again, haven't we? With the Batley Grammar School teacher, no one was prosecuted. The teacher had to go into hiding. We had that issue with the boy who scuffed a Quran and the death threats to his home. And then the local police chief took the mother of the child to basically plead for the safety of her family, in a shroud, obviously, as the Sharia Council basically, gave forgiveness for this event, but in return for her pleading and grovelling. I mean, rather than arresting the people who have threatened to kill the family of this boy. I mean, they have done this repeatedly. Look, we clearly have a problem at the heart of our nation. I think we have a problem at the top level of policing, top level of teaching, top levels of NHS. We've seen again and again, doctor after doctor, just outrageously making, horrific statements online, and then getting suspended, and then often not even getting struck off, basically calling for people to die. We're not talking about supporting the Palestinian cause. We're talking about killing Jews. Let's be honest about what they're saying. But this is across the board. Yeah. And how can you get a change of heart across the board when it's now so prevalent and so normalised? So when you talk about Islamist extremism, it's not. This is just woke, normal left-wing viewpoint now. Yeah, well, 2 points. I mean, first of all, normalised is the right word. I mean, I get lots of invitations to lots of events, as you can imagine, given my political role. They all have 3 things in common. They tell you what the event is, when it's taking place and where, except anything to do with the Jewish community. Doesn't say where. It's central London location. That has become normalised, and it shouldn't be normalised. The other point is this. You mentioned various bodies. Let me give you a personal example. Because I support the existence of the State of Israel, which, of course, is a position taken by the overwhelming majority of the Jewish community, not a particular government, not particular policies, just the existence of the state. Another barrister said on X that I was, quote, a racist apologist for genocide and apartheid. Now, I thought that breached the Code of Conduct, so I made a complaint to the Bar Standards Board. The Bar Standards Board rejected the complaint because it said the complaint, in order to be accepted, what he said had to be seriously offensive. And they said that while being called a racist apologist for genocide and apartheid was offensive,
it was not seriously offensive.
Interesting.
I mean, my view is that shows the Bar Standards Board is a useless regulator.
No.
Whether it's a seriously useless regulator, I'll leave your viewers to decide.
Well, indeed. I mean, but this is the thing. I mean, the stuff that I see on social media, I mean, I'm a Zionist as well. I support the right state of Israel to exist. You can see from the badge I'm wearing, given to me when I was on a trip to Israel. I still haven't been paid all my 7,000 shekels that apparently I get for every single post that's giving my personal viewpoint. But again, I support the state of Israel's right to exist in the same way I support the right of Britain to exist and France to exist and Syria to exist. I mean, I find it utterly bizarre that anyone thinks that is a controversial viewpoint. Just, you know, I want to ask you about some information that's just come out that I think is Jake Wallace-Simons and I will come to him in a moment, were discussing earlier, that the 45-year-old suspect, we're told is a British national born in Somalia, came here as a child. I would call him a Somali who has been given British citizenship. I think it's a more accurate description. Maybe a Welsh choir boy, I don't know. We may find that out. But as many of us suspected, once we heard that he had a history of mental illness and of serious violence, not just violence, serious violence, he was indeed one of those many people referred to prevent the counter-extremism programme. Now, you know, again and again and again, when people are suspected of being involved in these crimes, he obviously is a suspect at this point, about the video footage we have seen, they have basically come to the notice of the authorities, often mental illness, because actually stabbing complete strangers in the street shows a pretty high level of mental ill health, being referred to counter-terrorism.
I can tell you, the Jewish community at the moment, our main focus is not the far right.
Yeah.
It was the far right, as I said, in the 70s, but it's not now. And we need to focus on where the threat is coming from now. And we also need to look at state-sponsored threats.
Yeah.
The government has said that they will now belatedly move to introduce legislation in the next session of Parliament to ban the IRGC.
I mean, they could get that through tomorrow if they wanted.
Well, this government's got a huge majority, and I would be surprised if that legislation is controversial. What the government has promised is to introduce the legislation early in the next session. I want to see a promise that it's going to be fast-tracked.
It's no use to us otherwise. The question we put to our audience today is, what should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? In terms of action, you certainly want the prescription, which is the banning of the IRGC. But Muslim Brotherhood as well?
Absolutely.
And what about the pro-Palestinian / hate marches? Would you want those banned? Would you want any restrictions on them? What would you want to happen, if anything?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood, just to pick that one up for a second, we've now got to the state where the United Arab Emirates has warned its citizens not to study at UK universities for fear of being radicalised.
Yeah.
I mean, that should make us sit up. I mean, that is quite astonishing. On the marches, I am a free speech merchant. I believe in free speech. I believe in a vibrant public square. I believe in the right to protest. But calling for globalising the intifada.
Yeah.
I mean, we now know what that means. It means blood on the streets of North London.
Yeah.
And I am afraid I don't only hold responsible those people who organised the marches where that was shouted. I don't only hold responsible the people who shouted it. I'm afraid there were thousands of people on those marches who didn't shout it, but heard people who did.
And carried on.
And said nothing. It's a silent majority again.
Yeah.
Speak out.
Yes, there will be people on these marches who are genuinely concerned, but uniquely, by the way, about Gaza, not about kids dying in any of the other Middle Eastern nations where there are walls. But
of course, I mean, people. I have issues with those marches on several grounds, but just focusing on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing wrong with a march to protest the policies of the Israeli government, or the American government, or the French government, or frankly, our government, right? But I do have a problem with phrases like globalise the intifada, and I see now that the leadership of the Metropolitan Police has been saying, well, we're going to do something about it. I remember on one of the earliest marches, there was a call for jihad.
Yeah.
And I made a speech in Parliament calling that out and saying this is a call for violence. Oh no, said the Metropolitan Police, we have a specialist unit. Jihad also means personal development and spiritual improvement. Well, when people are shouting on the march, Muslim armies come to jihad, they do not mean personal development or spiritual improvement. We just need to be real here and to get real, and we need to be more muscular about defending the values which make our society the society we want it to be.
And this is the key thing, Jake Wallace-Simons, you and I have been speaking about this again. This is an attack not just on people, 2 men in Golders Green. This is an attack on the Jewish community, but it's also a wider attack on British society, on our values, on our institutions, on our freedoms.
That's right. I mean, I sometimes feel that the Jews are targeted first because, in a way, they're more ourselves than ourselves. You know, Rabbi Lionel Blue, the late Rabbi Lionel Blue, famously said that Jews are like everybody else, but more so. and I feel that, in a way, makes them a target for people who hate Britain and the West most. And I said before that, you know, all these marches that go through London frequently deface the statue of Winston Churchill and menace the cenotaph and have all sorts of anti-establishment, anti-British, anti-Western sentiments. These are people who want to subvert our way of life, and the Jews are just the first target on their list. And if people don't stand up and protect Britain's Jews, then sooner or later, once the Jews have emigrated or been marginalised or whatever, then it's going to creep further and further through society until we don't recognise ourselves at all anymore.
Do you agree with that, Lord Wolfson?
I do. I mean, the British Jewish community is proudly British and proudly Jewish. When I go to synagogue on a Saturday morning, 2 things stand out based on what Jake says. First of all, I now have to go through security to get in. There are people with stab vests.
Yeah.
But the other thing is something that hasn't changed, and it hasn't changed here since Jews were readmitted to this country back under Cromwell, and it's a prayer for the state. We say a prayer every Saturday morning for the royal family and the government, regardless of who's in power.
God, I'm not sure many of us would do the prayer for the government.
but we say the prayer because it's important to have. Well, I won't get into that, but it's important to have a government. And we are grateful to live in a democracy. We are grateful to live in a country with the rule of law. But that means that the people who are charged, which is government and politicians, with maintaining democracy and upholding the rule of law, really have to stand up now and be counted. Okay. And everybody else should stand up and speak out as well.
Absolutely. Lord Wolfson, Shadow Attorney General, Conservative Peer, thank you very much indeed for joining us. 12:24 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Lots of calls on the board. Get to as many as we can in the next few moments. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say. What should the government do to tackle the rise of anti-Semitic attacks in Britain? This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:27 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Obviously, all the calls are, of course, on this main topic, this terror attack in Golders Green. Ian is in London. Ian, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia, and thank you again for your support for the Jewish community in this country. But I think it's not only Jewish community, it's UK community of a fair mind. The thing that really really gets me frustrated, you have these MPs that attend these Nuremberg rallies, because that's what they like. They like the Nazi Nuremberg
You mean
rallies.
the marches, yeah.
Yeah. They're not marches, they're rallies. They're sort of spouting hate and anti-Semitism. And with that, Zara Sultana gets on last night, oh, I'm so sorry for the community. And in actual fact, she's the one that's calling from the
She was called out by J.K. Rowling. Oh, I hope this isn't the same Zara Sultana who has said this and that. Well, we see a lot of that, don't we? And again, Zach Polanski of the Green Party, I'm Jewish, I feel about this. The other day he was saying it was a perception that Jews were unsafe.
He's known to the Jewish community, or to me, as he used to call in the concentration camps a capo. He thinks if he throws other Jews into the gas chamber, he'll get away and he won't be attacked. That's what he's like. Yeah. But the biggest thing, which I feel most worried of, is you have the not only the Met Police, other police forces, like that one in the West Midlands, like the ones down in Suffolk, or not Suffolk, Cornwall, that was at the music festival.
Yes, Glastonbury, yeah.
Bob Dylan. And they see they can't do him for saying death to the IDF, because it isn't death to the IDF, it's death to Jews.
Yeah, because it's there as conscription.
Yeah. They're not sort of worried about what it is there. They're still doing it here. It's like that group Kneecap. The whole thing, we shouldn't even say their names to promote them, because that's what happens. Yeah. It promotes them. But it really is it's not just a joke. It is very worrying. My girlfriend all the time and her kids, we want to move.
I know. I keep hearing this from people, but also it's amazing. Each guest, each caller has named something else. I keep writing down, going, "Oh God, I hadn't forgotten about them." But you kind of lose track of the number of abusive things that have happened, offensive things that should clearly have been prosecuted and haven't been. And then we're saying, "Oh, we must act." Well, yeah. When's that going to start? Ian, I completely understand your concerns. Thank you so much for calling. Simon is in Ringwood and he wants to have his say. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
Good day. What it was, as I was thinking, we're forgetting one character at this interesting moment, and that's our esteemed Attorney General, Lord Hermer, who, as we all know, is a very astute, very expert and highly acclaimed legal type, who I'm sure, if the intent and will was there, could fast-track through as an anti-terrorism law that anybody in the future, effective from now, commits an assault, an atrocity, or an attempt like this on a Jewish member of our community, they are imprisoned and immediately deported, and their family as well.
What if they're British?
Somebody needs them.
What if they're British? What if they're British born?
They go back to their country of origin.
Well, if they're born in Britain, if their parents maybe were born here, then their country of origin is Britain. Can't deport them all. Can't deport British people. Where are you deporting them to? The other country won't accept them.
There needs to be some responsibility. There needs to be something drastic done to demonstrate this is what's going to happen to you.
Okay.
Yes, I know what you're saying, but something else needs to come up and be done immediately. I'm sick of all of this.
Yeah, there is certainly, we need more action. Again, the fact that there are people, from the IRGC here, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps here, and people promoting the Muslim Brotherhood and hate preachers here. It's utterly befuddling, isn't it? Lots of texts and tweets coming in. Nick says, deport millions. There are millions of people here who are here illegally, and an awful lot of people here who are from heritage, which is where they've absolutely not integrated to this country, not contributing economically, and I really have no idea why these people are here in this country and allowed to stay. And certainly, if you are perpetrating anti-Semitism or any kind of hate crime at all, absolutely, bye-bye, first plane out. Bobby says, how about getting rid of all known terrorists? 40,000 on the terror watch list would be a good place to start. Malcolm says they can't do anything, the government can't do anything, it's too late. Brian says the country's at boiling point. I fear this won't be the last attack we see. I know it won't be the last attack we see, Brian. Neil says if people don't want to integrate and support British society, then I think we'd better deport them. Pamela says no more insults with token solidarity gestures. We need the government to ban the IRGC, ban the hate marches and get the justice system working again. Mike says start deporting people and stop the boats. It's not hard, is it? Jake Wallace-Simon says it is hard though, isn't it? I mean, that's the reality.
It is hard because the system is not geared towards taking this kind of action. The system is geared towards the opposite. I mean, the legal system alone caters to, with its reliance upon European law, caters towards activist lawyers who are able to put the kibosh on any attempts to deport even foreign criminals who, even now that we've decided to deport, you always... And then you have activists blocking the planes and protesting and so on.
All those Egypts.
Civil society and the civil service and the justice system is almost geared against the interests of Britain.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, I mean... Again, I would say the poverty of low expectations of, well, you know, but what can we do? You know, if someone feels that, you know, they feel strongly about the cause of pro-Palestinianism or feel strongly about Prophet Muhammad not being depicted in a cartoon, well, what are you going to do? You have to not provoke them. Sorry. So we managed to, people cope with Life of Brian and the mocking of Jesus Christ as in a Christian and Christian heritage and constitutionally Christian country. OK, people got upset, but, you know, no one went around threatening to behead people or shoot people. We've got to stop having lower expectations. I mean, it's racism of its own.
You're absolutely
Is that
right,
expectation that, well, you know, you can't offend people who are Muslim, they might, you know. I don't care how strongly you feel about Palestine or Israel. It's got zero to do with someone standing at a bus stop in Golders Green and the right to stab him. I mean, it's got nothing to do with it.
And the irony here, of course, is that these people demand free speech when they want to parade through London shouting anti-Semitic slogans, but then they reject free speech when it means people criticising them or their way of life or their religion. You cannot have it both ways. You've got to accept it across the board. That's what it means being in Britain. And that's an illustration of how they're trying to subvert our freedoms in their own interests to eventually bring down democracy from within.
I think the fact that, you know, we can have mockery of pretty much any religion whatsoever in this country, in comedy, in humour, on the radio, and you know, and in public, but you don't see it when it comes to Islam, simply because people want to stay alive. It is that simple. I do not want to live with a panic button the rest of my life. I want my family to be safe, and I know that they would not be safe if I mocked or spoke about this one particular religion in the way that I would happily do so about any other religion, and I mean any other religion. And the reason why is because of fear. And that fear is only because we've allowed that to become accepted and acceptable in this country. And that is the fault of the authorities for not dealing with it from day one robustly and making it really clear. If you've got an issue with this, you're not welcome. Leave now or we will force you to leave.
That's right. I mean, Britain was supposed to have learnt the lessons and the faults of appeasement back with Neville Chamberlain. But unfortunately, we haven't. It's a lesson which we still have yet to learn, as exhibited, as you've said, by, you know, the leadership of the police, the government and throughout society. Nobody is taking a stand. They're moving the line again and again to corrode our own freedoms and way of life, and very soon there won't be anything left to protect.
Yeah, well, again, you can only tolerance is a key British trait and value, but you can only tolerate intolerance so far before there is nothing left to tolerate. 12:35 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk about something completely different. Going to talk about the latest madness of Ed Miliband, the latest, well, let's call it eco-fascism. That's what I don't like the word fascism in that circumstance, but his latest mad net zero drive. I mean, the man is doubling down in the face of every bit of evidence. This time, it involves your ability to dry your clothes. I kid you not. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back. 12:37 is the time. Let's talk about something completely different right now. But again, still the madness that we have to endure with this government. Ed Miliband, the so-called Energy Secretary, Energy and Net Zero, of course, energy security, really. But, I mean, you can't have net zero and energy security, so it's probably best if they didn't combine those two titles. But his net zero madness and obsession continues apace. His latest plan is to introduce new laws that will phase out the sale of condenser tumble dryers, you know, the ones that actually dry your clothes, and promote the heat pump alternative to help cut our carbon emissions as part of his net zero drive. Let's talk to Maurice Cousins about this. He's campaign director at Net Zero Watch. A very good morning. So good afternoon to you, Maurice.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
What a surprise. Here's something that Ed Miliband wants to do. While government, by the way, remember, was going to tread more lightly on our lives, they've tried to interfere with how we heat our homes, what kind of cars we drive, you know, when we're allowed to use electricity and gas. Now, when we and how we heat our homes, they basically want to replace perfectly good system we've got, although let's face it, quite expensive to run a tumble dryer, with a system that will mean it will take longer and be more expensive. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it?
Yes, really good idea. I mean, it's basically an allegory for what net zero will mean for all of us. Life will just become poorer, less convenient, and miserable. Really, you know, the machines that they're wanting to replace will operate at a lower temperature, which means that when you put your clothes in and you want to dry them, you're going to have to wait. Sometimes, apparently, some studies have shown that they can take up to half an hour longer than a conventional.
They
tumble.
Already take ages.
Yeah, but so that you know you'll probably take you over a week just to dry a pair of pants. But you know, I think there is a really serious point though here, which is that you know really the best way to look at net zero is that it is an all-out assault on modernity and its values and the things that we all really care about. You know, we care about convenience, we value material progress, we value speed, and we value things like free choice. And slowly these things are being eroded and taken away from us.
Yeah, well, absolutely. People always forget, genuinely, there are three things that freed up women's lives, OK? One was the vote, one was the pill, and the other was the washing machine. So women didn't spend their entire lives doing laundry all day and actually were free to do other things, you know, get jobs and things like that. And the tumble dryer, those who can afford to run them, has been an absolute game changer. Instead of having to, lots of us, I mean, you know, don't have gardens. And by the way, it rains quite a lot here. So people can't put their stuff out. But this is the thing. We're constantly told that, you know, this net zero drive is going to, you know, just clean a world. I mean, A, that's a load of nonsense. But B, we're told that, you know, this is what people want and that these things are better than what we've currently got. But if they were better, you wouldn't have to outlaw them. They didn't outlaw travelling by horse and cart when they introduced the car. Because people went, oh, look, the car is obviously better. It's quicker, it's better, it's more efficient. We're going to use cars. You don't have to outlaw, you know, gas central heating to get everyone to get a heat pump. If heat pumps were better and cheaper, people would all go, oh, I'm going to get a heat pump. If EVs were better, people would get an electric vehicle. If there was a better way and a cheaper way of drying our clothes, you know, we would all move to it. But they always keep insisting on bringing in laws, bringing in regulations to force us to take on the worst technology.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, we're often accused of being ideologues for specific forms of energy or different types of technology. It's just simply not true. If I'm a fanatic about anything, I'm a fanatic for the end user and the experience that they can have.
And the market delivers for us.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And you know, that's all really people care about is that will their lives be improved by some of these things? And the conceit really about net zero has been from the get-go that you can basically continue with your way of life. You can continue to consume the things that you enjoy. You can travel, you can eat meat, you can have your car, etc., etc. But it'll just be greener and more sustainable. You won't notice it. It'll be a smooth transition, and it'll just be substituted for just a cuddlier version, and the polar bears will all be fine, and everything will be rosy. But actually, the reality is far different. You're poorer. You're your life is less convenient.
Yeah.
You're more tired. You're more miserable, and it's not progress.
You're quite right, but the key thing here is this has been contained in even the Climate Change Committee, the body, again, the supposedly neutral body. That, I mean, half of these people haven't even got any. I mean, they've got fewer qualifications than I have in the field of climate change, and they're advising the government on their climate change policies and how to enforce the Climate Change Act, the actual laws that basically limit us doing anything progressive and for our economy, because it's limited by carbon emissions might go up. They have in their own documentation. It's government authorised body made it really clear that you're not going to achieve net zero unless you have massive changes to people's lifestyle, how far they can travel, how often they can travel, whether they can fly or afford to fly, whether they can eat meat, eat dairy. All of these things are when they can heat their homes, how they heat their homes. All of these things will necessitate being controlled for us to achieve this mad target that's going to have no good purpose. But of course, the key thing is it won't affect, the people who, like the Ed Miliband's or other people who are pushing this, because they'll be rich enough to escape it because there's an extra cost to flying or there's an extra cost to heat your home. Well, that's all right. They can afford it because they're millionaires.
He'll be totally fine. Like when he leaves government, he'll get a lovely consultancy, maybe sit on a nice board with a big bank or a green energy firm or something like that. He'll be totally fine. I'm not worried about Ed Miliband being able to cope in this new world, or Keir Starmer or any of these other people that have pushed all of this. They'll be totally fine. The thing that I can't stand is the dishonesty, because the fact is that Ed Miliband knows the system. He knows the system that he is building produces less energy and power, and as a result of that, he needs to be able to ration the amount of energy that we consume. That's the only way that they can make their system work. But they lie about it to people. They pretend to people that you'll notice no different. Indeed, actually, it'd be better. It'd be just it'd be cleaner is the way that they sort of say it. But actually, it isn't, and everybody's life will just be leveled down, and we'll all be a lot poorer. And the 2000s and the 1990s will look like a distant age, and we'll all be yearning for them as we head into the 2030s, and we're saying, where's it all gone? Where has our life gone?
Absolutely, I find it extraordinary that people are saying we should normalise people not being able to travel abroad on holidays, which has been a game changer for so many people's lives. Getting that week in the sun they've worked for all year, but also again, the washing machines, heating your home. I mean, I know people, within my own generation who grew up in homes that were freezing cold, had ice on the inside of the window. That is not the norm now because of the wonderful thing of gas central heating. People being able to travel for work, people being able to have their independence from their cars and things. It is, and to choose what they eat from abroad when they want it because it's flown over here. These are such basic things to us now, the norms. Putting on the heating, putting on the lights and not worrying about that. This should be the norm, and yet that's, as you say, they want to ration it all. Maurice, so appreciate you coming on. Do come on again. Maurice Cousins, campaign director at Net Zero Watch. Appreciate that. Jake Wallace-Simon's still listening in on this from the studio. I mean, there is nothing, even what's happening in Iran conflict. The barrels of oil now up to $115. I mean, they are no more than that. More than that, I think, $130 a barrel. There is nothing that will persuade Ed Miliband that his net zero crusade is completely and utterly both pointless and wrong and dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we've had plastic straws being banned. We've had those bottle tops that come off your bottle banned. God knows why, but it always hits you in the face when you're trying to take a drink. And now we can't use straws, tumble dryers anymore. It's just miserable. The whole thing is miserable. And the irony of it is that while we pursue net zero, don't drill in the North Sea anymore, don't frack and undergo all these restrictions on our lives, the Chinese and the Indians and the Russians and everybody else around the world, billions and billions of them, are busy pumping coal fumes into the atmosphere, using as much electricity and dirty energy as they like, pumping out petrol fumes all over the place, and we are making absolutely zero difference with our net zero targets to global warming. So it's totally not worth it. But
ruining our lives. Let's just to bring you breaking news. The police have now confirmed, the Metropolitan Police, that the Golders Green knife suspect was known to the Prevent Counter-Terrorism programme, was subject to a referral back in 2020, and it was closed in the same year. This is what had been a lot of people have been reporting. The Prime Minister is has arrived in Golders Green. He's made a visit. A lot of criticism yesterday not turning up. Protesters have been shouting, Keir Starmer, Jew harmer, traitor, and shame on you. Getting, looks of it, worse reaction than the Metropolitan Chief of the Police who arrived yesterday, Sir Mark Rowley. We'll bring you footage of that when we get it. 12:47 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about the economic shock after the war, the result of the war on Iran, with Elliot Wilson. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a director of communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:50 is the time to let you know that the Prime Minister has arrived in Golders Green to a lot of boos, to shouts of Keir Starmer, Jew harmer, traitor, and shame on you, as his car sort of zoomed in with all the outriders and a lot of police present. He is not a man welcome in Golders Green after that terror attack yesterday, certainly. Right now, though, look, we're going to turn our attention away, sort of away from that issue, because people seem to think that stabbing Jews in Golders Green is acceptable because of what actions have been going on in the Middle East. But certainly the Middle Eastern war, the conflict with Iran, is having a big impact on our daily lives, as we have seen the economic shocks from that war, and many more to come. Let's talk about it with Elliot Wilson. He's a military writer and senior fellow at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. A very good afternoon to you, Elliot.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, we have seen oil has jumped to its highest price since 2022 after reports that Trump report that Trump is going to be looking at new options in Iran, that these talks that we were hoping were going to take place in Islamabad have not happened, and that we've had a statement today, first one for a long time, from the supposed current Iranian supreme leader, Mujtaba Khomeini, but it doesn't look like that the tensions are ramping down, but that means the economic impact is ramping up as well, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I think this was always going to be a problem because it was never going to be a short economic shock. We learned a little bit when the Houthi militia closed the Red Sea a bit in 2024, but we didn't really take that very seriously. But it did have long-term impacts, and this is a fifth of the world's oil and a fifth of the world's liquid natural gas. The Americans are a little bit insulated because they produce so much themselves, but worldwide prices going up will affect Americans, and American consumers are acutely conscious of what they pay at the gas station for their petrol.
$4 a gallon. I don't know how many litres there are in a gallon. I'm rubbish at those sort of conversions, but certainly when the Americans moan about those sort of prices, you ain't seen nothing yet. They would probably have a heart attack if they saw what people were paying here. But looking at this prices for oil here, I mean $126 a barrel, rising by almost 7% in the last few days from Brent crude. That has a massive impact. But there has ostensibly been no change in any actions in the Iran conflict. But this is all about mood music, isn't it? Because this is basically what all those who play those markets and are making decisions about, was it the Brent crude oil that you're going to be delivering in the next month, what that will be, whether or not you think the Strait of Hormuz is going to be reopened or not.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the other problem is that I don't think President Trump has really thought a lot about how this is going to play out. I think he's been quite puzzled that the war is still going on, to be honest. I think he expected that after what were very effective military strikes in the first few days, that everything would then peter out and the Iranians would say, OK, what do you want? And we'll capitulate. But the Iranians have dug in to an extent. There's been a kind of weird Dutch auction about who's closing the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians close it and then the Americans say, no, we're closing it. And you think, well, it was pretty much closed anyway from the beginning of the conflict because insurance went up so much on shipping. If it is reopened somehow, if the Iranians have put any serious effort into mining it, that's going to be a long job to clear. I mean, it could be 6 months.
Although the Iranians were getting ships out until the American blockade, which, so you could just simply follow those routes. But I suppose, of course, they could have mined it further since that point.
That's the problem. I mean, it's first identifying where all the mines are and then getting rid of them. I mean, it's a very slow, very painstaking business. And it happens to be one of the areas where both we and the United States have taken down our military capacity in that part of the world. So, this is not going to be a quick fix. And I think from the American point of view, what's particularly significant is this could still be going on by the midterm elections in November. Yeah,
I mean, that's Trump's problem, but it's all of our problem as well, because we haven't really seen the full impact of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz yet, because a lot of the oil, the jet fuel, the diesel, the helium that goes into microchips and all of those other things that we've been consuming, the price has gone up, but there's still a supply of it, because that's the stuff that had already left the Strait before the war started, aren't they, in late February. So we're about to hit the point when, there's no stocks left. We're still talking about jet fuel being rationed, flights being cancelled, premium extra charges on flights as a result of people their summer holidays that they've already booked. We're talking about our heating bills, our electricity bills going up for a lot of people, and pretty much everything we buy in the shops, because everything comes at some point by sea or by air or by rail or by lorry eventually. So we are going to see that feeding through. How bad do you think it's going to get?
It could be quite serious in terms of we're already in a cost of living crisis. We already in this country have some of the highest energy costs in the world. So I think we are particularly sensitive to that. And I think also you're exactly right talking about the sort of the lag in the effect of it, because we live in a culture which is very much what's the news today. Yeah. And in 6 months' time we'll be thinking, well, what happened? Why are we suddenly still paying more for oil or for all the goods in the shops? And I think that's going to be a shock to people. And I think also the shock of just not being able to do things we take for granted, like you can't fly to your holiday destination because there is no jet fuel, and there's nothing we can do about this, and it's not you being victimized. It's just that's what's happened. And at the same time we've got a population which seems to be saying we don't want anything to do with this war, we want it's not our war. Well, it kind of is now. I mean, it's all our wars, and it was always going to be, actually.
That's the reality. And is there any evidence that the government is on top of this? They keep saying, look, we're concentrating on this. PMQs, the Prime Minister saying, I'm talking about this, I'm chairing this meeting, that meeting. Are they doing enough? Is there any evidence they're doing anything to make this better for us?
I think it's a vast exercise in displacement activity. I mean, they're talking about all these elaborate plans for a second coalition of the willing, given how well the first one went, because it still hasn't got anything to do. But, they're planning 4 or 5 steps down the line once there's a ceasefire. Well, nobody sees a ceasefire at the moment. And also, we have so little to contribute in terms of hardware and platforms to any kind of monitoring of a ceasefire. So quite what we're bringing to the show, apart from a sort of cheery smile and a cup of tea, I'm not entirely sure. whatever.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Well,
the European nations are willing to let us take that.
We shall see what happens. Great to talk to you, Elliot Wilson, there, Senior Fellow at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Jake Wallace-Simons, just your final thoughts on this. I mean, you know, Prime Minister's quite right when we're all talking about the Mandelson affair or any other else. That actually people want us to, government to concentrate on dealing with these sort of issues. And there's no doubt at all there's going to be a huge issue in terms of hitting to the economy and growth and our price rises. And we've seen interest rates held today at 3.75. They're not going down because of this. That affects people's lives, affects businesses. But is there any evidence the government is on top of this and is capable of doing anything to help us?
Well, I think the government's been on the back foot ever since the beginning of the Iran war, wasn't notified about it, didn't take part in it, as Keir Starmer lost no time in reminding us ad nauseum.
I mean, literally every 5 minutes.
And didn't even defend our Cyprus airbase once it was attacked. So it constantly is behind the curve, now talking about opening the Strait of Hormuz with some peaceful expedition with the French, but it remains to be seen whether that's going to be effective or not.
Absolutely. I just want to very quickly play you a quick clip of Keir Starmer arriving in his car and being booed as he arrived at Golders Green, the scene of that anti-Semitic attack yesterday. Have a listen and watch this. No doubt at all, he was not Jake Wallace-Simons' popular arrival at Golders Green. Neither was the Met Chief of Police yesterday either.
And with good reason. I mean, as I always say, Keir Starmer's been fanning the flames of anti-Semitism with one hand and reaching for the fire extinguisher with the other.
Yeah, you don't have it both ways, absolutely. Also, just some breaking news. 14 passengers on the Elizabeth line in London have received medical treatment after a smell of chemicals was reported on a platform at London's Farringdon station, according to the London Fire Brigade.